What is up, everybody? Chris of Midlife Crisis Media here. Welcome to the second part of my Blu-ray box set section of my Film Collection 2024 live streams. Didn't have time to come home and shave the dome, so stuck with the hat once again, and it's looking stupid. Anyway, last week I did the first half of my Blu-ray. It's a combination of things. It's box sets that contain multiple movies, multiple movie compilations, and just general things that are oversized when compared to a standard Blu-ray case, because the entertainment center, the shelving unit that I have all my regular Blu-rays and 4Ks on, the height is of a standard Blu-ray. It's just big enough or high enough to fit a standard Blu-ray case. Anything taller than that, it's a no-go. It has to go somewhere else. I also like to keep everything that's wider than standard off to the side as well. So I have a completely separate section for stuff that has, like I said, the multi-movie cases, the box sets, and the oversized cases. So I did the first half last week, and actually, I will be right back. I forgot something for the second time. Okay, now we're back. So last week I forgot to talk about one of the multi-movie collections that I have in this section because it's brand new. I talked about it at the end of the March pickup stream, the March recent pickup stream that I did. Was it last week, last Monday? And I had it off to the side because I hadn't worked things around to try to fit it in, and that is this Halo complete video collection set. So this has it's a combination of things. It's a combination of movies and web series. So this has Halo Legends on it, which was an animated anthology movie, kind of like the Animatrix. A bunch of different anime directors came in and did different stories within the Halo universe. Some of them have to do with Master Chief, some of them don't. And they're all compiled in this Halo Legends movie that I did own separately when it first came out. And also Halo 4 Forward Unto Dawn, which was released previous to the fourth game, came out on the Xbox 360 to help advertise it because Bungie was no longer producing the games. They were no longer developing them. 989 Studios ended up taking over. Sorry, 343 Studios. Where did I get 989? 343 Studios ended up taking over, and there was kind of like a backlash about that. So in order to get some goodwill going before the game came out, they released this. It was a web series that was, I think, 6 episodes. But when you put them all together, it was a feature-length film that was about an hour, just over an hour and a half long. It had Anna Popplewell in it, who was in the Narnia movies. She played the oldest of the 4 children, the 4 main children stars. She was the oldest female star. And a couple other people, Daniel Cudmore, who played Colossus in the original trilogy of X-Men movies. And I do believe Days of Future Past plays Master Chief in this. And it's a prequel that leads up to where a specific character that you don't play as, but you follow, he's one of the main characters in Halo 4, what it took for them to get there and why they have such respect for Master Chief, because it's all about that person at the military academy, and then it gets invaded by the Covenant, and Master Chief comes down and rescues everybody and fighting alongside everybody, which was pretty rad. I liked it quite a bit. I watched it as it was being released on the web, and then I bought the compilation when it came out on Blu-ray. So at that time, I only had Legends and Forward Unto Dawn, and then all these other ones came out that I didn't know anything about, and I remember reading that this collection was coming out, so I got rid of the other 2, and I was just going to buy this, and I just totally forgot about it until last month. So the other 2 that are on here that I didn't have was Halo Nightfall and Halo The Fall of Reach. I think Fall of Reach is another web series, and Halo Nightfall, I do believe, is another animated film, but I have not seen either of those. Not yet. I have not seen them when they were first released, and I have not seen them here because this is still sealed. So, 4 massive Halo side story things. Hell yeah, had to have that. I'm a huge Halo fan, so had to pick that up. But like I said, I had it off to the side last week when I should have grabbed it with all of last week's collections that I was going to talk about. But like I said, it was in a different place, so I totally forgot about it. So far, that is an ongoing theme with these film live streams, where like I did the first DVD and 8 VHS one. Following week, I'm like, oh, here's something I forgot before I talk about what I'm supposed to. Same thing here. Anyway, now we're going to get back into the where I'm at the alphabet from last week. And there are 2 of these. I have these Jackie Chan collections that I got from Shout Factory, and this covers 1976 to 1982. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Jackie Chan films on it, and I cannot read them. I think it's The Killer Meteors, Shaolin Wooden Men. Jesus. How about I just open up the case and look at the discs, because it'll tell me the names. Okay, The Killer Meteors, Shaolin Wooden Men, To Kill with Intrigue. I have to actually take a disc out to read the rest. Snake and Crane Arts of Shaolin, Dragon Fist, Battle Creek Brawl, and Dragon Lord. Battle Creek Brawl, I do believe, was released over here as The Big Brawl. It was like Jackie Chan's first big American movie, directed by the same dude who directed Enter the Dragon, but it did not take off like Enter the Dragon did. Most of these are Jackie Chan's early movies where they're like your typical like stuff you would see on Saturday morning, or what is it, Samurai Sundays? Like those really weird, badly dubbed kung fu movies where everyone has like their hair up in the bun kind of thing. And then as Jackie Chan went on and he started to prove himself more as more of like a comedic actor, the movies kind of changed. But these are mostly all of the serious Jackie Chan kung fu movies before he started getting into the comedy. I have not watched a lot of these yet, but I wanted to buy this collection because I'm a huge Jackie Chan fan, and because now I have the excuse to watch all of it. It gives me a reason to watch them. I own it. So I need to check a lot of those out. I've only seen one movie on that set. But the other one, Volume 2, oh God. This covers 1983 to 1993. This is the one I really wanted, and I picked that one up because I'm like, why not? So this has, oh man. Here we go. I cannot read that. Shit. What does that say? God damn it. Winners and Sinners, which is one that I have not seen. Wheels on Meals, which is awesome. The Protector, which is awesome. Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars, which is awesome. What is that? Armor of God, hell to the yeah. Armor of God 2, Operation Condor, hell yeah. Crime Story, hell to the hell yeah. And City Hunter. City Hunter is the one that you might have seen in memes and stuff where Jackie Chan is dressed like Chun-Li from Street Fighter. This one has a lot of ones that I saw in the theater, rented on video when like Rumble in the Bronx had come out and Jackie Chan Mania took off in the mid to late 90s. I was not into kung fu movies. I mean, I would watch a movie like Bloodsport or something like that, but kung fu was a part of it. I mostly was watching because it's a Van Damme movie. It's an action movie. When it came to like martial arts movies in general, I was not a big fan. Like I was talking in the Samurai Sunday stuff, I always found that stuff really cheesy. But once Mortal Kombat, the original movie, came out in 95, and then Rumble in the Bronx followed up right after that, I was all in on Hong Kong, like kung fu stuff. I could not get enough. I went out and rented everything I possibly could. And then like every 6 months, we had a new Jackie Chan movie in the theater. Most of them are old movies that they just re-released. And there's a little weird like timeline thing going on here. So I have not seen Winners and Sinners. Wheels on Meals is awesome. That's one of the ones that has not only Jackie Chan, but Sammo Hung and Yun Bu, like the Trinity. They're called themselves like the brothers. They all went to like acting school together where they learned how to do the kung fu and everything. Anything with the three of them in it is usually pretty good. The Protector is great. Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars, I do believe, is another one that has all three of them in it. Armor of God is like Jackie Chan's version of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's the movie he almost died while he was making. He was doing a stunt where he was going to jump off a wall, grab onto a tree, then slide down the tree. Well, he jumped off the wall, missed the tree, fell like 20 feet, and landed on his head. And he basically cracked a chunk of his skull off in his head. And in the bloopers at the end of the movie, you see it happen. You see them sitting there like putting a towel on his head, and it is just soaking through with blood. And then he ended up going like into a coma. And he was like out of it for a while. And of course, they patch him up and all that. He comes out of the coma, and what's the first thing he says? Like, what happened to the movie? Can we get back to filming or whatever? And I want to say within a week of waking up from the coma, he was back making the movie. And you can tell it's different because I guess when they brought him to the hospital, they had to cut his hair in order to get at the chunk of his head that was damaged to get to do the skull operation. And his haircut is different for like it starts one way in one scene and then it's different at the end of the scene because they picked up where they left off and he already had the different hair instead of getting a wig or something, which makes no sense. But the movie is awesome. And then there's part 2, which was released over here as part 1. So you have Armor of God and then Armor of God 2, Operation Condor. Well, the Weinsteins released them out of order over here. They released Operation Condor or Armor of God 2, Operation Condor as just Operation Condor over here. And that one is another really great Jackie Chan, like Indiana Jones style adventure kung fu movie, which I think is great. And then later on, they released part 1 over here as part 2. So we got Operation Condor and then Operation Condor 2, Armor of God. Confuse everybody. It's the other way around in Hong Kong. And then you have Crime Story, which got spun off into a bunch of other movies. And then City Hunter, which is another like action comedy movie, but there's like a scene where there's a fight in an arcade, and the actors that are fighting keep on changing into like the video game characters. Then from the arcade, like I said, Jackie Chan turns into Chun-Li and does like a little yatta thing at one point. It's really bizarre, but I love it. Each of these has a bunch of extras for each movie as well. This is the one I really wanted, but I got part 1 to go along with it because I am just a Jackie Chan fan in general. So, happy to have that. Next up is this double pack of Jim Carrey movies that I picked up, I think, at Half Price Books, and it is the unrated cut of Dumb and Dumber and The Mask. I'm not a huge fan of Dumb and Dumber. We watched it with, Gaming Off the Grid for the Movie is Starting podcast that I do with my friend Jeremiah. And I don't find it all that funny for some reason. I just think it's like really over the top. It's like where Jim Carrey started just getting annoying, like his humor. Like with Ace Ventura, I was like, oh my God, this is something kind of new. Like that whole annoying, bizarre humor. And it was something different. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I saw The Mask, and The Mask, there was a reason behind it where it's like he's possessed by this spirit in this mask. And I love The Mask. I still think it's a very fun movie. Cameron Diaz, like it was her first big movie. And she is hot as hell in that movie. And based on her performance in that, she was going to play Sonya in the original Mortal Kombat movie, but she broke her wrist during training, and they brought in Bridget Wilson instead to take her place. But then with Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey's shtick started getting old with me. Like I went and saw it, and I was like laughing at it, but I'm like, most of the time I was just kind of cringing. Like this isn't funny. It's just annoying. And then like each movie where he continued, like Ace Ventura 2, and like every movie that followed, I was just like, no, like I just don't think this is for me. So I'm not a fan of Dumb and Dumber. I bought it mostly because of The Mask, which is awesome. It's based on a Dark Horse comic, which is actually really violent, but they toned it down to be PG-13 because, Jim Carrey's a living cartoon. It's perfect for him. But violence-wise, not so much. Adjust the camera a little bit here. There we go. So how's everybody doing tonight? Midwest Gaming Classic was this past weekend, and it was freaking awesome. Saw a whole bunch of people. Ate a lot of pizza. Bought a lot of games. You'll definitely be seeing some shit at the end of the month at the pickup stream. So next up is a Bruce Willis double feature that I bought. And I bought this for one movie and not the other. But it's The Last Man Standing and The Last Boy Scout. I saw Last Man Standing. It came out when I was working at that video store in the mid-90s. and it's kind of like a Western. Was it directed by Walter Hill? Yeah, Walter Hill directed it, and it's kind of like this modern day Western, and I don't like Westerns. I thought it was just kind of dumb, so I didn't really have much love for it. But when it comes to The Last Boy Scout, I absolutely love that one. I saw it in the theater with my dad and my brother, and the reviews were great, but each of them said the same thing, that it is probably one of the most misogynist movies ever made, and they're not lying. Like, all the female characters in these movies are like assholes, and all the men just treat them like shit the whole time. It's just, I don't know where Shane Black was when he wrote this in his life, like mental wise. Like, was he going through a divorce or a bad breakup or something? Because there's like a lot of hate just aimed at women specifically in the movie. Outside of that, it's a great action movie, and it is funny. There are some great lines in it. Like the whole Prince thing. I like Prince. Thing. The movie cracks me up. It's about football, which is a subject I don't care about, but I don't care. It's great. I absolutely love it. Tony Scott knocked that one out of the park. He didn't have really anything to do with the script. That was all Shane Black. But outside of that, I love it. And then we have this is a big ass box set I got from Arrow Video, and it's a movie that you either love it or you hate it. I love it. One cut of it, I'll say, and that is Legend. For some reason, Arrow usually releases like these big limited edition box sets. Like, you can get it on a Blu-ray, or you can get it in 4K. They never released a 4K of this. I suspect it might be coming later, but I was not going to pass up the Blu-ray because it turned out I had a regular old standard width Blu-ray of this. It was the Ultimate Edition, I think it was called, and it came with the theatrical cut and the extended cut. I don't know if it's considered a director's cut. Is it? Yeah, the director's cut. It had like the director's cut on it as well, but for some reason it would not work anymore. Like, something happened to the disc. I remember I watched it when I first got it because we watched it on my old version of the movie starting podcast, and we used it for that. But like, I went and watched it like maybe 3 years ago, and it just did not want to load up. It would not play. Like, the disc was dead. So when this came out, I was just like, well, that's perfect. It has not only the theatrical cut on Blu-ray, but also the director's cut. The director's cut is a totally different movie. So what happened was, fantasy movie in the 80s, you either love them or you hate them. I love them. Krull, Excalibur, trying to think, Dragon Slayer, that kind of thing. Absolutely my thing. And this one it's one of Tom Cruise's big roles, first big roles, where he was the headliner. Tim Curry plays basically the devil, and Mia Sara is in it, and Robert Picardo from Star Trek Voyager, who plays the holographic doctor, plays like this creature named Meg Mucklebones, who's like this goblin that lives in the swamp and wants to eat Tom Cruise. Whatever. And unicorns control the light, basically. And someone cuts off the horn of one of the unicorns, essentially killing it. And like the light starts to fade and evil starts to take over. And Tom Cruise has to go and get the horn back to restore everything. It's goofy and it's silly, but it's fun. I like it a lot. It's got a great visual style. The sets are great. The costumes, the music. That's where it gets weird, because I guess originally Ridley Scott, who directed this, guy who did Alien and Blade Runner, he delivered this cut that was longer. It was darker. It was scarier. It had a completely different score by Jerry Goldsmith. And like, it got released that way in Europe and overseas. We didn't get that over here. Over here, it got sliced down to like 90 minutes. A completely new score by Tangerine Dream was composed, which I love, don't get me wrong. And the movie bombed over here. Like, nobody gave a shit because all the reviews were saying the movie made no sense, and it kind of doesn't. I just love it for like the audio-visual side of things. But when it comes to like the story and the plot, it is kind of nonsensical. It's because it all got cut out. And I do like the director's cut. I just don't like Jerry Goldsmith's score. I think it's just really cheesy. If you were to combine the director's cut movie with the music from the theatrical cut, I think it'd be a perfect thing. But it's not. But I do prefer the director's cut. The Gump character, the little elf character, looks like a little kid. In the theatrical cut, he's just kind of like, yeah, we'll help you, whatever, because it suits us. We'll do it. In the director's cut, he like has this scene where he goes complete like Darth Vader and just goes complete evil and shows him what he's like. He's like, do not mess with me. If you are tricking me and my friends, I will. He goes, I will fuck you up. And it goes really dark, and it's kind of scary. completely different tone from the theatrical cut. But I'm glad to have them both here, and this not only comes with both versions of the movie on disc. Is there anything in here? Yeah, there are some lobby cards in here. I love the way that Arrow puts these packages together. They really give you a lot for these limited editions. So you get all of these like lobby cards with shots from the movie, even with a little bit of a logo on the back. What is it? No good without evil, no love without hate, no innocence without lust. I am darkness. So yeah, different promotional stills. You got Tom Cruise and Mia Sara from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She is adorable in this freaking movie. There's the unicorns. Only 2 left in the movie, and that's why it's critical that we don't lose them. Mia Sara when she goes all goth. Another close-up of the unicorn. And then the Gump, the character I was just talking about, that goes all crazy dark at one point. And I guess this is another movie that was coming out through Arrow. Sailor, Suit, and Machine Gun. I don't know what the hell that is. And it also comes with, actually some more lobby cards. Tim Curry kills it as Darkness, like the devil. You can tell he is just having a blast being not only unrecognizable, but just being able to ham it up as much as he wants and get away with it kind of thing. He kicks ass as Darkness. It also comes with a poster, a 2-sided poster, that has the new artwork that was commissioned for this limited edition box set, as well as the original theatrical artwork. I prefer this one. And also a book that talks all about the making of the movie. It's like a little essay book. And I love that they include these with all their movies. Yeah, Arrow. I remember one of my friends, Justin Cardboard Zero, who we just recorded an episode of the movie starting with him, came to visit back at the beginning of February to go see the Near Automata concert. Says that I remember one time I visited him in church, the Game Grinder in Minnesota. He's claimed that Arrow Video does the Lord's work, which I thought was really funny because they put out some great stuff and they pick popular yet still kind of obscure movies from the 80s and 90s. Like True Romance is a great movie. I don't know many people that actually are still aware of it, at least modern, like millennials or like Generation Z. So it's good that they're bringing these movies out and letting people discover them all over again. And then here is the Lethal Weapon 4-film set. I actually had a big box set. We're talking like the box was probably this wide because it had one Blu-ray case for each movie in it. Took up way too much space. And then one day I go to Target to do some grocery shopping. And as usual, I go to Target. I'm like, I'm going to go check out the electronics section, see if any games are on sale, see if they have any interesting movies. And I saw this sitting there, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'll get that to help save some space. So it has all 4 Lethal Weapon movies. I like them all to varying degrees. I don't think any of them are bad. First one, I like. I think it's a good setup for things to come. Part 2, I think, is fantastic. Part 2 is my personal favorite. 3, I did not like at all when I first saw it. I thought it was just stupid. But upon rewatching it on home video, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And I do believe that was going on during, were they filming it during a writer's strike or something? It felt like they were making it up as they went. Watching it at home and like not on the big screen, just like big expectations like I had because I love the second one. I think my expectations are more in check, and I was just kind of like, this is just a fun action movie. And then you have part 4, which is kind of like, we got to make one more before everyone gets too old kind of thing. But that's kind of the point of the movie. Is like, are they really getting too old to do these things? And I absolutely love it. I don't think it's the best of the 4, but it's good. Like, they're all good in their own way, I think. So absolutely had to have that. There's the original posters. The cast for each movie gets bigger with each movie. So the first movie is just Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. And then they introduce Joe Pesci into part 2. And then it's Joe Pesci and Rene Russo in part 3. And then it's Joe Pesci, Rene Russo, and Chris Rock in part 4, and Jet Li in part 4. They're all fun. I like it. Here's another double pack I bought for one movie and not the other. And I was just talking about how much I'm not a big fan of Jim Carrey, but this is like early Jim Carrey. This is Jim Carrey prior to In Living Color, where he got his big break. And that is this double pack of like vampire comedies. So it's Love at First Bite and Once Bitten. I bought this for Once Bitten because that is one of those movies I used to watch on cable all the time. Love at First Bite has George Hamilton, Susan St. James, and Richard Benjamin. And I've never actually watched that. But Once Bitten, yeah, George Hamilton plays possibly the tannest vampire in screen history. On the back it says this. Once Bitten is like Jim Carrey is like this horny teenager. Girlfriend's not giving it up. As most movies in the 80s, that's kind of the plot. I don't know why that was such a thing. So he and his friends go downtown to a club, and he befriends a vampire who he doesn't know he's a vampire, and all she really wants is his virgin blood to keep her young. And it turns into like this fight between his girlfriend and the vampire, trying to like pull his allegiance either way for the rest of the movie. And it's funny, Jim Carrey does a lot of Jim Carrey things, but he's not nearly as annoying. He's actually very normal in it for the most part, until like there's some over-the-top moment where he has to like act like a weird vampire or something. I like it. I think it's really, really funny. And it was on cable not too long ago. I remember I caught it when I was visiting my mother. Then there is the Mad Max trilogy. At the time, this was just a trilogy. Now it's a quadrilogy. What is it? Quadrilogy would be 4. Quintology would be the 5. And this actually came in a big metal case, and I have it stashed away somewhere, I think in my closet. I'm not going to dig it out for the video. But yeah, this has the first original 3 Mel Gibson Mad Max movies. So Mad Max, The Road Warrior, and Beyond Thunderdome. I'm not a big fan of the original Mad Max. I know a lot of people think it's like the greatest thing ever. I find it very boring. It's ambitious for something that had like $100,000 budget and was made with a bunch of unknowns. No one knew who the hell Mel Gibson was at the time. You know, he was just like some Australian actor, you know, just trying to get by. But on the whole, it's not the apocalyptic thing. What's up, Creepleet? You want to see the metal case? Yeah, it's buried in the closet somewhere. I don't feel like digging it out. It's not the apocalypse just yet. It's like Mel Gibson is like a street cop, and his wife and his child get killed by like a street gang, and he goes and tries to wipe them out. It's very simple. Then the movie kind of ends, and the next one picks up with like, oh, by the way, the world ended between the 2 films. That's where I think the series really picks up. The Road Warrior is, I think, a fantastic post-apocalyptic action movie. It has some of the best car chase scenes. And Beyond Thunderdome, half of it's directed by George Miller, who directed the first and the second. During the production of Thunderdome, one of Miller's like best friends died, and he kind of took it really hard, so he had to step away from the movie. And then I guess the producer took over directing the last half. So like all the stuff that has to do with Tina Turner and Bartertown and like the big chase scene at the end, that was all George Miller. Everything that has to do with the kids in the desert is the other guy. But it was still credited to George Miller because he directed more than 50% of the movie. But I used to watch Road Warrior and Thunderdome on a loop. Like I would watch them back to back over and over again. They are fantastic action movies. Kind of really got me into the post-apocalyptic thing. Yeah, first Mad Max is okay. Yeah, I'm not really into it. Fury Road, on the other hand, oh my God, I saw that 4 times in the theater. Next up is a trilogy. It is the Robert Rodriguez trilogy. That's El Mariachi, Desperado, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. As a young filmmaker in the 90s, I remember hearing stories of this Robert Rodriguez guy who basically sold his body to science to make a feature film. And I was like, oh, really? Where did he go? Like, how do I get into that study? I want some money to make a movie. And it's exactly what he did. He shot like a feature-length movie on like a shoestring budget, and he sold his body like he was like doing all these weird drugs. He was like selling blood, all that kind of stuff. I read his book all about it, The Rebel Without a Crew. It's fantastic. And El Mariachi is what we got. And while it's nothing crazy, but when you watch it and you know the story behind how it was made, it's incredibly awesome that he was able to do the things he did with the money and the inexperience. It's awesome. And it became so popular that he got enough money to make a sequel, Desperado, but he had to recast the original character or the original actor who played the mariachi character. It's now Antonio Banderas, who barely spoke English when they made the movie. He had to learn all of his lines phonetically. And it was Salma Hayek's first big movie, and she is hot as fuck in it. And then we have the third one, which is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And I remember watching, like, you can watch the progression of Robert Rodriguez's career through this trilogy. Like, the first one is like, it's humble beginnings kind of thing. And like, I don't have money, but I'm going to make it work. God damn it, I'm going to make it work. Desperado is like, yes, I've made it. I'm making a Hollywood movie, and I'm going to make it the best goddamn Hollywood movie I could possibly make it. And then we have Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and he's like, I've made it. I don't need to try too hard anymore, but I'm just going to cram with as much shit as I possibly can and still make a 90-minute movie. The whole thing with Johnny Depp in it and, you know, going blind and turning into Daredevil out of nowhere is just, I think it's so dumb. The mariachi character is barely in the freaking movie. It's mostly about Johnny Depp. I think he kind of ruined the trilogy with that. So I like the first two, but I'm not a big fan of the third. I remember watching that on the IMAX at the local theater, and when it was over, I was just like, what did I just watch? Like, that was not, like, that did not feel like it belonged in this trilogy. It was like the mariachi character made a cameo in his own movie. Ugh. Not a fan, but the first two I like. Goose. Oh, yeah, I remember Goose. What's up, Stevie Dan? You only like Desperado? I like El Mariachi just because, like, from a filmmaking point of view, like, the shit he was able to do in that movie just, it baffles me. Like, you know. And then you watch how he shot stuff, and it was like, oh, look, the guy's climbing up the scaffolding over here. Have the camera zoom in on him, and then when now turn around, guy, and come back down. When he comes back down, zoom back. And you have like two really cool looking shots that were just made like within the 15 seconds of each other. Just how you use them. I don't know. I love it. And he edited together like on VHS, and that's how he got copies of it out there. It's pretty cool. I just like the way it was made. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm super tired. I apologize. I'm probably not making a lot of sense. Take a breath. Anyway. And I'm probably going to be talking really, really fast because that's what happens when I'm tired. Anyway, next up we have the Missing in Action trilogy. We got some Chuck Norris in here. I have not watched these movies in so damn long. I probably have not seen these since the 80s. And there's another thing, like I was talking about with the Jackie Chan set. The movies were released out of order. So when it comes to these were made by Cannon Films, Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus. They did the Break-In movies, Bloodsport, Masters of the Universe, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Life Force, the Invaders from Mars remake, you know, that kind of stuff. They were known for making like really cheap movies that made a lot of profit. Like you make a movie for $2 million, it makes $20 million, you know, at the box office, it's a hit. So they were like starting to get a little ambitious. And what they ended up doing with this was they got Chuck Norris on their payroll, and they had like a what do they call it? The contract with him that he had to make so many movies with them. So they were like, well, we'll get two of them out of the way first because I don't think he had a whole lot of time to work on them. So they shot two movies back to back, and it was the Missing in Action 1 and 2. The only thing was, what we ended up getting was Missing in Action, which is Chuck Norris in the 80s, goes back to Vietnam to rescue POWs that were left behind after we evacuated Vietnam. Part 2 is the beginning. Part 2 is a prequel about when Chuck Norris was in Vietnam and in a POW camp, and he escaped with a bunch of other POWs. The way these were filmed, though, was the one that ended up being the prequel was the first movie, and the one about him going back to Vietnam was the second movie. When everything was edited together, everyone at Canon got together and did like a screening, and they were like, you know what, this like first movie is terrible. It's pretty bad. But the second one you guys made is pretty awesome. So how about we just like reverse them? We'll release this one first, hook everybody, and then release the second one a year later and get everyone to go see it because the first one is so good. We'll trick them into going to see the second one, and the second one's terrible, so we'll have their money. So that's exactly what they did. They flopped the movies around, and that's the order they go in now. And then we get Braddock, Missing in Action 3, which is more of the same of what Part 2 or Part 1 is now, where he Chuck Norris now lives, I think, in Vietnam, and he has a Vietnamese wife and a kid, and I think they get killed, and he goes off for revenge. And I have a story about meeting Chuck Norris at the time that this was released. So my mother was still is a huge Chuck Norris fan. She thought he was the hottest freaking thing ever. And we got word that he was going to be at the local B. Dalton bookseller at the local mall signing his new book. And I can't remember what the name of it was. But she wanted to get it signed for a copy for her and a copy for her brother who was into martial arts. And she took me and my brother to go and meet him. So I was really, really shy back then. Like, I would not even look people in the eye kind of thing. And we go down there to the lower level of the bookstore to meet him. And sure enough, he's sitting there and he's looking like he's being real friendly to everybody. And I was like, okay, cool. So like my mom goes up to meet him to get the autographs. Sorry, to get the autographs. And I kind of like slide off to the side. And because I was just kind of like, yeah. Like I don't want to talk to him. Like, I'll say something stupid. So I, being a little shy kid, I just shuffle off to the side. And mind you, at this point in time, I have seen The Terminator. I have seen Commando. I have seen pretty much any Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie that had come out at the time, like Running Man and all that kind of stuff. Any Stallone action movie like Cobra. All this kind of violent R-rated action movies, right? I've seen the first two Missing in Action movies. They are both R-rated. Part 3 was PG-13. And I don't know what possessed my mom to say this, but like she sees me standing off to the side and she goes, oh, I have a question for you. And he's like, yeah, what? She goes, your new Missing in Action movie. I saw it was PG-13. Is it okay for the kids? And like me and my brother at the same time were just kind of like, we've seen the first two movies. Why are you asking if it's okay for us? And he just goes, it's PG-13, so I don't see why not. And he saw the look of embarrassment on my face. I'm like, what are you doing, Mom? Just being a butthead, kind of look on my face. And he like slid over to me and he goes, hey, how you doing? And he like shook my hand and patted the back of it and all that. And he was just like, did you see the first two movies? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you're going to love the third one. I'm like, okay, cool. And we left and we walked out of the bookstore. I go, why did you do that to my mom? She's like, what? I'm like, we saw the first two movies and they were rated R and you didn't blink an eye. You didn't, nothing. There was no problem with renting them for us to watch. But you have to ask about the PG-13 movie. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Embarrass us? And she's like, I don't know. So that's that. Need to watch these again. I have not watched them in like forever, like the 80s, like I said. And then here's one that I picked up because I've only seen parts of this on cable. I heard about this when I was visiting Church, the Game Grinder, and Justin Cardboard Zero in Minnesota. This is probably in 2000 and this is probably 2021. At the end of 2021. Yeah, I think it was the end of 2021. And Vinegar Syndrome was this new boutique company that I was starting to pay attention to when it came to like movies being released on physical media. And it was me, Church, Justin, and then Tom Reinert, or Movie Tom, you might know him by online, sitting around talking about like shitty, cheesy movies. And Tom brings up this one that is being sold by Vinegar Syndrome at the moment. What's up, Davey? How's it going? And I'd never heard of it before. And they're like, it's called New York Ninja. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, it was made in it was made in the 80s. The whole movie was filmed, but the guy who directed it, who also had produced it, got the budget for it together and everything. He basically filmed everything and then he gave up on it. He didn't go through any of the post-production process of it at all. So basically there's just these reels of film for this movie just sitting out there that no one has touched in decades. And Vinegar Syndrome found out about it, went and found the reels, bought them, and said, hey, don't worry about it. We'll finish the movie for you like 30 years later. So they ended up editing the movie together. And since they had filmed the movie with zero audio, there was no voice, no nothing. Everything was filmed silently. They were going to redub it after the fact. They hired a bunch of people who were known for being in martial arts movies in the 80s and 90s to play the voices of the characters. So they brought in Don the Dragon Wilson, Cynthia Rothrock. I think Billy Blanks is one of the guys in it. It's like a whole bunch of people like that. Jeff Speakman, I think, is in it to voice all the characters. And it is really, really funny. And I've seen a bit of it on cable. I was visiting my mom and I was like flipping channels on her TV. And I'm like, New York Ninja. And I caught the last half hour of it. I'm like, oh, this movie is glorious. I need to buy it. So I went to the website and bought it. And there we go. New York Ninja, the movie that should not have been. And it comes in this really cool oversized case that's like magnetically sealed. And you can see it has really awesome artwork inside. Behind the movie, I love the New York Ninja. Here's a slip case. Got the movie in there. That's like I guess what's supposed to have been the original poster art. And it also comes with a book about how the movie got made. So the story of how the New York Ninja came to be, A Tale of Two Ninjas. So it's a book about how they managed to find the reels, edited it together, got all the cast together to redub the movie. And it is a piece of shit. It's like a really low budget 1980s martial arts movie that was trying to take advantage of the whole ninja popularity that canon started with Revenge of the Ninja and Enter the Ninja and Ninja 3: The Domination. And like nobody in the movie knows kung fu. You can tell. It's like everybody's always whiffing. But what I saw of it, I thought was great. It was just so bad and cheesy. I had to have it. So there's that. And then here's one of my favorites. I've seen 3 different versions of this movie. But this is one of Clive Barker's directorial films, and that is Nightbreed. So this has 2 versions of the movie on it. But there are 3 out there. They never put the 3rd version out on home video. There is a bootleg floating around where you can get the 3rd version. So we have the theatrical cut. So what happened was, what typically happens around this time is, number 1, movie gets cut down for violence because Clive Barker writes horror movies. American Ninja, I love. Yeah, that's canon as well, Stevie. That's I have both of those. I have all 3 of the Ninja, like Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3: The Domination. I need to look up, see if there's a copy of 9 Deaths of the Ninja I can find or something. What's up, Retro Coop? So, Clive Barker's an author of horror movies. He wrote the book and then directed the film version of Hellraiser. The book was The Hellbound Heart. Known for being really gory, violent. I mean, a guy gets his head pulled apart by like hooks in his face, connected to chains. They just rip his head apart. So naturally, the censors are going to be like watching the next movie that this guy does. And at the time that this came out, they were really really trying to censor horror movies, like the violent content. They were really breaking. The phrase keeps escaping me. It's like not breaking them down, but they're really coming down hard on like filmmakers and studios and stuff for horror movies. So number 1, violent content gets edited out of the movie, basically. 2, the movie was way too long. Clive Barker, I mean, the book, if you've ever read the book that Nightbreed is based on, Cabal, it's really epic. Like, it is big. And he tried to put everything in there that he could, but Morgan Creek, the studio that made this, they were still riding high on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, think that all of a sudden they know how to make movies great because they got lucky with one movie that was troubled from the start as well. And they basically tell him, no, we cannot release an hour or 2 hour and 20-minute horror movie into the world, even though it's like an action horror movie. Cut it down to 90 minutes. So that's what this is. The movie is okay, I think, as the theatrical version. It's Hellraiser Tetralogy by Arrow. Yep, I have that too. When I get to my 4K box sets, you'll see that in there. Yeah, the transfers on those Hellraiser movies are awesome. So you're gonna love it. I think as the theatrical version, I think it's just an okay movie. A lot of the plot points get glossed over, especially if you're a fan of the book like I am. Characterization is very light. The main character's girlfriend is really annoying in the theatrical cut. I really do not like her in the theatrical cut. And like things aren't explained properly, like why the Nightbreed are able to do what they're able to do. It's just not really explained. It's just kind of like, oh, like we died and we came back and now we can do all these cool things. There's more to it than that. So not really a fan. I mean, I like it, but I don't like it. But there's this director's cut, which reinstates a whole bunch of deleted stuff and the violence. And the movie makes a hell of a lot more sense now. There's a whole new ending in here. That was the one that is in the theatrical version was a reshoot. And it was supposed to lead into like sequels and stuff. This kind of still does, but has a the ending in this is so much better. The character of Decker, played by David Cronenberg, who's trying to like kill all the Nightbreed, his through line is a lot more interesting and fleshed out. The Lori character, the girlfriend character that I was complaining about in the theatrical cut, she is way better in this one. Like you get the feeling why she is doing what she's doing for Boone, the main character. Even though this rumor going around that he's like a murderer is out there, she's like, I don't believe it. You feel that she really loves Boone. And that's what makes the movie work to me, is their relationship. Way better version of the movie, I think. It's a little bit longer. I think this is like just over 2 hours. But right before this got released, there was this assembly cut. I can't remember what it was called. The Cabal cut. And it screened at a local theater down the street from me. Me and my ex went to see it, and the movie was seriously like just shy of 3 hours. And it had a lot of footage that was found on home, like videotapes that Clive Barker had of footage that he recorded, and like stuff that had not been processed properly in film, and it was like the film had faded and stuff. But this guy, I think his name was Russell Charrington, talked to Clive Barker about wanting to put together like a complete version of the movie, got Clive Barker's permission, and put this like Cabal cut thing together, and went around the country like touring with it to like certain cities. And they came to Chicago, and I was like, well, it's here, I'm going. And I was blown away by it. It's not nearly as long as this. I mean, it's longer than this one. Sorry. It's way longer than this one. But this one, the Cabal cut also felt very drawn out in certain parts. This one kind of fixes that. So I think this is a good in-between the theatrical and that Cabal cut. But I ended up meeting the actress who plays the character that I couldn't stand in the theatrical cut, who plays Lori. I met her. She was at the screening. She was super freaking nice. I got a picture of her and my girlfriend. She signed a poster that I got there. I met Russell Charrington, the guy who edited the movie together, and all that. It was super cool. So this thing is now out of print, like this limited edition box set one. But you can get, I do believe, the director's cut on its own separately, and the theatrical cut on its own. And I do believe the theatrical cut has a 4K release as well. And it also comes with this book that is basically just a bunch of like stills from the set, and I guess a couple of essays from Clive Barker about the making of the movie. If you're going to watch this movie, I'd highly recommend the director's cut. Watch that. It makes way more sense, and it's more fun to watch. And then we got the one of my favorites, even though I'm not a fan of a lot of movies in the series. This is my favorite franchise when it comes to horror films, and that's the Nightmare on Elm Street collection. So this has parts 1 through 7, Nightmare on Elm Street 1, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Dream Master, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Dream Child, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, and Wes Craven's New Nightmare. These were the movies I was not allowed to watch when I was a kid. So like I was talking about with the Chuck Norris thing, I was watching all these R-rated action movies, but because they weren't straight-up horror movies, I was allowed to watch them, which to me, as an adult now, makes zero sense. I couldn't watch a movie that had Jason Voorhees in it killing people with a machete. But I could watch Arnold Schwarzenegger chop people's arms off with one in Commando and throw a buzzsaw at a dude's head and like cut his scalp off and, throw a guy over a cliff. I could watch those just fine, but I could not watch a horror movie because of the context in which it's happening. Makes no sense, but whatever. One of the ones I always wanted to watch, the ones I was the most jonesing to watch, were the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I wanted to see these so bad because someone at school, when I was in grade school, described them to me. And I was like, everything takes place in the dream, so like anything can happen. I can imagine what those movies look like. I want to see that. Well, wasn't allowed to until I think the first straight up. I mean, I saw horror movies once in a while. Like I'd be at a friend's house, I'd see one. My parents weren't were away for the night or whatever, because my parents used to go bowling like every other Sunday night. And if a horror movie was on TV, we were watching it. And I saw a few. I saw like the original Halloween, and I ended up catching Friday the 13th 7 and a couple of others. But like the first one that I actually I'm watching this and you're not going to say a goddamn thing about it, was Hellraiser 2, the unrated cut of Hellraiser 2. So I went hard. Anyway, when I finally got around to watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films, I was like, I instantly fell in love with them. The first movie, it has that weird thing where you can't tell if what you're seeing is part of the dream or in reality, because like it looks real, but weird stuff is happening. Like, is she daydreaming? What's going on? I love it. Freddy Krueger's a great character. I love Nancy. She's a great final girl. I don't know what the hell I was about to say right there. I need a drink. She's a great final girl. I love her. She's written so well. And Heather Langenkamp plays her so well and like relatable, which is why I was super thrilled when she came back for part 3. Part 2 is cool. I saw it like after. So I saw these kind of I saw the first one, then I saw 3, then 4, then 2. And then the first one I ever saw in the theater was 5, followed by the rest. When I finally got around to 2, I was like, I like part 2 because it's different and it's not just trying to repeat the first movie. I like all of the like homoerotic stuff in there. I thought it was interesting, like a weird subtext going on in the background. Like I said, it was completely different from the first movie, and I like it a lot. I like that the final girl is a guy. It's great. I think it looks like a TV movie a lot of the time. That's my problem with it. Like, it was filmed very generically, where the first movie kind of went crazy with the visuals. The third movie went really crazy with the visuals. The third one is my personal favorite. That was super ambitious. They brought Nancy back, and she's a real badass. All the other characters in the movie are great. I love the whole dream power aspect of it. Freddy's awesome, and that's where he started cracking wise, was in the third one. The kills were great and creative and kind of gross at times. I just absolutely love it. It's like one of the most fun horror movies I think I've ever seen, and still consider it like one of my top 5. 4 copies, 3 way too much for my liking. I liked it when I first saw it, but now I watch it and it's just trying to repeat everything that part 3 did all over again, and it's not doing it nearly as well as 3 did. So I kind of like go, yeah, whatever. It's an all right movie. 5 I saw in the theater, and 5 is, I think, one of the most boring horror movies ever made. Like, when it comes to like body count, there's only like 3 people that get killed in it, and the kills are like really overly complicated. And because of, like I was talking about, the editing thing that was happening at the time with the MPAA coming, cracking down on violence in movies, they had to really cut a lot out of the kill scenes, and now they don't make any sense in the theatrical cut. There is a director's cut, or like an extended cut out there. It's not the version that's on this set, which kind of sucks. But the movie's just boring, and it's a downer too. Like, I like the fact they're trying to say something about teenage pregnancy, but the way they're doing it is like, no. And then Freddy's Dead, I think, is one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. Like, all the hype, everything they're talking about, like, oh, Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold are going to be in it, and Johnny Depp's going to come back, and it's going to have Alice Cooper in it, and the ending's going to be in 3D. And I remember I was super hype. I was like, okay, if they're going to go out, they're going to go out with a bang. And when I went and saw it, I was like, this is so dumb. It is so cheesy and badly made. The 3D does not work. The whole thing with Tom Arnold and Roseanne Barr is just dumb. I cannot stand it. It is so bad. But then Wes Craven came back and made New Nightmare. New Nightmare, I think, put it back on track. Made Freddy kind of scary again instead of a joke. Because that's all part Freddy's Dead is. It's like a big joke. Made him scary again. The kills are great. And I like the fact that it's very meta. It's like Wes Craven's like first version of making Scream, where everything in Scream is kind of meta and self-referential. This is like his trial run was New Nightmare, and I think it's great. But outside of that, like, I don't like a lot of the movies in this series, especially like part 5 and Freddy's Dead, I think, and 4 to an extent. Like, no. The Car, is that, I'm trying to think about, is that recent or is that older? Next up, we have another multi-movie franchise set, and that is, it's missing the first movie, but that got released separately on its own. But this is Nemesis 2, 3, and 4. So if you've ever heard of a director named Albert Pune, it was out in 1977. Okay, so I kept on, I'm trying to think if I keep on wanting to think it's like The Car That Killed People or something, but don't worry, dude, I'm in the same boat. In 77, I was 2. Albert Pune was like the king of schlock in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And his first big movie was called Sword and the Sorcerer, and that was like a favorite in our house. It was like this really cool fantasy movie that was really violent. But then he started making like these schlocky movies that were made really, really cheap. And he got like notorious for that kind of thing. He made a movie called Alien in LA that starred Kathy Ireland. It was just, no. I'm trying to think what else he did. He worked for Full Moon Entertainment quite a bit. You're going to see a bunch of Full Moon movies and a few of his coming up. He worked for them for a while, and like as he went along, his movies just started getting like worse and worse and cheaper to the point where they were like almost unwatchable. But like in the 90s, he kind of had this like point where he would look like he was kind of on an upswing because he made this movie called Nemesis. And Nemesis is this cyberpunk action movie starring this German martial artist, Olivier Gruner. And it was kind of ambitious for having such a low budget. And it was theatrical. A lot of his movies were going direct to video at the time. It went theatrical, and it actually got like decent reviews, but on video it became like this huge hit. So it got okayed to make a sequel. Well, the way the first movie ended, it didn't really make sense to make a sequel, so he decided to make whole new characters. And I don't know what he did, but we saw, my brother and I saw part 2 was playing in one theater by us the weekend it was released. James Brolin was in it. Jesus, that's after Amityville, right? I think. So what he ended up doing was like, I don't know if it's like a fetish of his was playing out on screen, but he cast a lot of female bodybuilders as the lead characters in this movie. Like there are female bodybuilders all over the place in this. One of them is this actress named Sue Price, who is like gigantic. And it's about her. So the first movie is about like how technology is taking over. And it's almost like a whole Terminators type of thing where like there's a computer program like Skynet that's going to take over. It's like put itself in this body, this robotic body, and it's out trying to kill the main character who's trying to stop it. And in this one, it's like it's happened in the future, like the computers took over, but a person who is like John Connor, who has just been born in the future, is sent back in time to hide in the past so that when she grows up, she can stop the program before it ever takes root. So it's kind of like a whole Terminator thing all over again. And they send the machines send a robot named Nebula back into the past to kill her, and that is the person that's going to end up killing them is this bodybuilder Sue Price. And the robot is played by Chad Stahelski, who is Keanu Reeves' body double for all the Matrix films, and he's the director of all the John Wick movies. And the second movie is just this nonstop action movie. And my brother and I were kind of like okay with Nemesis. We thought it was fun, but it obviously was like this low budget sci-fi cyberpunk thing. But we enjoyed it enough to go see the sequel. And me and my brother were like watching the theater. We're like, he must have had a smaller budget because of the low amount of cast members in the movie. And it was filmed like in South Africa or something. But like, it is just nonstop action. Like he got away with a lot of stuff for the money that he had. Like this is actually pretty fun. No one in the movie can act, I'll tell you that much. But when it comes to just pure action spectacle, it's pretty rad. And there's kind of like an overuse of like really bad CGI, like whenever Nebula cloaks himself, it just looks like this big blur moving around. And like, there is no way that's considered cloaked like a Predator. I could see that thing coming a mile away. But it's a lot of fun. And when we heard that there was a third movie filmed back to back with the second movie, we're like, we're going to watch that the moment that comes out. Well, it went direct to video and I rented it. Half the movie is reused footage from the second movie as flashbacks. And then the other half is Sue Price dealing with this really like embarrassed looking Tim Thomerson who just constantly has really bad CGI placed over his body because he's like a robot disguised as a human, but for some reason his robot version of himself keeps on like popping out every once in a while when her back is turned. And it's like he had extra money to spend, so he just kept on throwing all these extra CGI enhancements over it. And it makes the movie so bad. It is like virtually unwatchable. And then they also filmed a fourth movie a little while later, which is the same thing. Sue Price is out there trying to kill robots, but all of a sudden the whole program in the future thing storyline is gone. She is now an assassin going around killing half android people, but she's now half android, and she murders people while she's naked. So if you ever wanted to see a naked female bodybuilder, this is the movie for you. And whenever she kills somebody, needles come out of her nipples and inject into somebody, and she electrocutes them to death with her needle nips. It's really bizarre. Second movie, I bought this for. The second movie is fun. Third movie, no. Fourth movie, what the hell? The fourth movie is like 65 minutes long. No. But I bought it for part 2. I also have part 1. But that's the only way you can get a copy of part 2 in high def. And I was waiting for it. It never came out on DVD either. So when I heard that it was coming out on this box set, I was like, I don't care if the other 2 movies suck. I want it for that second movie because the second movie is still fun, and it is. I watched it like when the set first came out, and I still had a blast with it. Next up, I have this box set of Prometheus. This has the movie not only on Blu-ray and DVD, but also Blu-ray 3D. And this is one of the prequels to Alien that Ridley Scott made that I read the original script to what this movie was supposed to be. Originally, this was supposed to be called Alien Origin. And John Spates wrote the script, and I found the script online and I read it, and it was pretty cool. It was basically one contained movie. It answered every question you could want. Why that ship from the beginning of Alien is on LV-426, what it was doing there, what the aliens are, all this kind of stuff. And it was really rad. And it introduced a new breed of alien into it that I thought was really kind of cool, and I wished I would have seen realized in the film. And then they brought in, I guess, Damon Lindelof, who his mantra when it comes to making movies is everything must be cloaked in mystery, and it should be a trilogy. So all the stuff that made John Spade's script cool was removed, and then all these like mystery things that kind of muddle everything were introduced. Don't get me wrong, I do love Prometheus. I think as a movie, not counting that script, I think it's awesome. I love it a lot. I saw it in the theater in 3D in the IMAX theater by where my mom lives, and me and my girlfriend at the time were just like, that was fantastic. Like, that was awesome. Like, it was better than I thought it was going to be, because you never know when you got these like sequels or prequels that come out like decades after the franchise has technically already ended. A lot of times they end up just being like a cash grab, and I was like, this didn't feel like a cash grab. This felt like, there was a reason for it being they wanted to try to bring the franchise back, and they're going to start at the beginning and work their way toward Alien. And it felt like the way it was going to be pretty rad. I liked where it ended and all that. I liked all the characters. I loved Shaw. I thought she was great. That whole cesarean section scene was fantastic. And like the way the aliens were being developed and all that was kind of cool. And like it looked like it was going to lead into something pretty rad. And then we got Alien Covenant, and it kind of ruined it. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's okay, but I didn't like the direction it went. But had to have the 3D version. I don't know if this was released any other way in 3D outside of like this box set, this like limited edition. Yeah, 4-disc collector's edition. But I was glad I got it because it's way out of print. Saw it together in the Alien. Yeah, it's awesome. I love Prometheus. But the script, do a Google search for Alien Origin. It is fantastic. Like, the way they worked everything into it is great. And that new alien type at the end, I'll spoil it here. So that area in the first movie where they found the eggs, where that one hit or landed on John Hurt's face, that was just one area. There are multiple areas with different types of alien eggs in them that were being used as weapons. Basically, you want to take out a civilization, dump these on the planet. They'll take care of it for you. They have different aliens to impregnate people for different types of situations. Well, one of them, so Shaw's character, Noomi Rapaz's boyfriend who gets infected by the black thing, he actually gets one of them on his face, and it's a different type of face hugger. The alien that comes out of him is paper thin. You can't see it if it's facing you because it's like the width of a sheet of paper, but if it turns sideways, it's like this massive thing, and it basically just cuts everyone to shreds. And it's pretty fantastic when the way it's described in the script and the way it goes around killing everybody in the script. I thought it was great. And I would have loved to have seen that in the movie, but it wasn't meant to be. I was hoping that when we got Alien Covenant that they would work that stuff into it, but they didn't. Anyway, so Prometheus, I almost skipped these. Okay. Next up, we have this big-ass box set, and that is the Phantasm Sphere Collection. This has all 5 Phantasm movies in it, and I picked this up last year. I had known of its existence for quite a while, but it was very expensive, and I already had all 5 movies in separate Blu-ray releases. I had one from J.J. Abrams. Paid for a restoration of the first movie right after he made Force Awakens, and I bought the special edition version of the first movie based on his restoration. Scream Factory released the second movie, and then I had found 3, 4, and 5 at some, I think it was a Half Price Books, and they're all part of a set. They had all 5 movies there from the same set, but I already had 1 and 2. Why would I buy them again? I just bought 3, 4, and 5. And then I heard of this coming out, and I was like, I want that because of what it comes with. And if I can get this damn thing out, that would be fantastic. Get out! That's the only thing I don't like about this set is that it is extremely hard to remove the contents. You son of a bitch. Without tearing it. And I've already damaged this quite a bit just from trying to take this stuff out. which I can understand why the person who was selling this on eBay was selling it, is because he probably was like, I'm going to bust this thing up. Okay, so that's one part of it. Now to get the movies out. There we go. Okay, so everything comes in this big-ass box, right? It's got artwork of the main characters. It tells you what it's got in it. So the movies themselves come in like this thing that looks like a book. And you pull this out, and all the films are in here in those little cardboard sleeves, which I absolutely despise, because you will scratch the hell out of discs pulling them out of these sleeves and putting them back. But the reason I wanted this is because it came with this. It comes with one of the spheres from the film, and it opens up. Oh no, it's underneath. Shit, I don't want to drop this thing. Everything's in here. I'm not going to put the knives into it because I'm going to leave it inside the box. But it comes with like the knives from the films. You can kind of see them right there. You could attach them to the front. You got little holes right there where you can snap them in. And it also comes with like a base to display it. But I already have one right here that I talked about last week. This it opens up and you've got the DVDs inside of the first 4 movies, but they're all from the UK, so I can't really watch them. I basically just use this as a display piece. So since I already have one, I don't feel the need to take this one out of the package and display it like they want you to. So Phantasm movies are these really bizarre horror movies, I guess. So there's this being from another dimension called the Tall Man who comes to our dimension to raid our graveyards and steal the dead because he needs to build an army to take over his dimension. But in his dimension, the gravity is so high that you have to be like a dwarf in order to survive there. So what he ends up doing is he steals our corpses, reanimates them, crushes them down to like 2.5 tall, 3 feet tall, and then ships them back to his dimension to like fight in this war that he's waging. And a bunch of local kids who find out about his plan at their local cemetery decide to take him on. And then the rest of the movies is about them as adults, like still trying to stop him because the Tall Man has been like taunting them since then, in vengeance for what they did to him in the first movie. So the first movie is just like this weird fever dream kind of thing. It feels like it was made while everyone was high. You got these spheres that the Tall Man uses as sentinels in the buildings where he's making the dwarf characters. And they fly around. These knives will come out. They'll attach to your head. Like they'll stab you in the head. So the ball will be like right here. And then a drill will come out and drill through the bridge of your nose and like suck your brains out. And over the course of the different films, different types of spheres are shown. The second one is my personal favorite because kind of like when you compare Alien to Aliens, Alien is like a straight up sci-fi horror movie. Aliens is a sci-fi action movie. So if the first movie is considered a horror movie, the second one is an action horror movie where it's like, the Tall Man has been killing the main character's family as like a retaliation for what happens in the first movie. So they decided to take the fight to the Tall Man and start chasing him across country to take him out once and for all. And the rest of the movies kind of follow that plot, except for part 4 and 5. So the second one got the funding of Universal. I guess the guy who was in charge of Universal at the time, in like 88, I think it was, told the director, Don Coscarelli, like, I'm a big fan of Phantasm. I would love to produce a second one. We'll give you a ton of money to make it. So that's why part 2 looks like it cost a lot of money to make. But it didn't really perform very well, but they still wanted to continue making Phantasm movies. So they made a third movie, which is essentially just the exact same thing as the second one all over again, just with a lower budget. It went direct to video. It's okay, I think. But when it came to the fourth movie, Universal had backed off at that point because that dude that was in charge of Universal left. And Coscarelli was like, I'm not done telling my story. So he had to like wrangle a bunch of money together. And in order to cover the costs or to like cover up the fact he didn't have a lot of money, he just reuses a lot of cut footage from the first movie and uses them as flashbacks that take up about half the film. And in the end, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then the fifth movie was shot over the course of like 3 or 4 years. Every time the cast members would meet at a convention somewhere, to do like autographs or like Horror Hound Weekend or whatever, they would get together and like film a bunch of random scenes, and they would figure out a way to tie them all together later. And you can tell they're super old now because like the first movie was made in like 78, 79. And then this was made in like 2015. I think it finally came out in 2015 or something. So like they're really old. Their story is non-existent. It's just a bunch of random shit, random cameos of characters from other movies. I absolutely hated it. I saw it in the theater. They showed J.J. Abrams' restoration of the first movie at the theater I was at, followed immediately by Ravager Part 5, and I could not stand it. Like I was like, what the hell am I watching? But I wanted to have the entire collection on Blu-ray, so this is the way I was going to do it. And it comes with this really cool sphere prop, which is awesome, which is actually more accurate to what size of the sphere is, because this is about half the size of the one that has the DVDs in it that I have right here. But it has to be that big to hold the DVDs to begin with. So there's that. But I would say like Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 are fun. Part 4 and 5 are poop. She asked me. But I got this really cool case out of it, which is awesome. Or this really cool set out of it. So there's that. Now to just put it all back without breaking something. It goes back in easier than it comes out. That's what she said. Have I been watching The Office lately? No. Anyway, and then this box set. So we're talking about Full Moon earlier. Well, if you know Full Moon Entertainment, Full Moon Films, Full Moon Features, I think they go by now, their big flagship franchise is the Puppet Master series. So Charles Band, who owns Full Moon, has a website that's Full Moon Online, and he also has a streaming service that has all of the Full Moon movies available to watch on it. And there was a deal going on. I don't know if it still is. Don't quote me on this. There was a deal going on a few years ago. I think it was during COVID, where if you signed up for a year's worth of Full Moon's streaming service, you would get this big ass box set for free. And this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 DVDs in it. Like 11 movies, 12 DVDs total, because one is like an extras thing. So it was kind of worth getting the streaming service just so you can get this for free. I didn't. I didn't want the streaming service. I didn't want to pay for another one. But the thing is, they also every Valentine's Day have like this big clearance sale on their website where everything is like 60% off. And I went there during that sale really early on because usually like everything sells out. I went there and I got this for 60% off. So I only paid like $40 for it. I think it was like $100. So I was really happy to get this, even though a lot of the movies in this franchise are pretty shitty. But this is the franchise that made Full Moon what it is. The first movie that they ever released was the first Puppet Master. So what is Puppet Master if you're not in the know? It's a horror fantasy film where some dude learns how to how to animate inanimate objects, namely puppets. He puts like the souls of dead people into these puppets, and they like obey his commands, even though he's a very nice man. But the Nazis are after the technology or the process that he uses to do this. And at the beginning of the movie, the guy Toulon, who's learned how to do this process, kills himself in a hotel after when he learns that the Nazis are coming after him. But he hides his puppets in like the wall of the hotel, and then it jumps forward to 1989, I guess it is. And a bunch of psychics go to this hotel because they hear it's haunted, and they find the puppets, and the puppets start going around killing everybody. And it turned into like this big epic franchise. Charles Band has like this, I don't know if it's a fetish or what, but he has a real like thing. There's like a theme going through a lot of the movies that Full Moon releases that have to do with small little dolls or puppets or toys coming to life and killing people. He does that a lot. But this led into this gigantic freaking franchise that basically defined, I keep putting this in the wrong order, defined what Full Moon is. So they made a sequel not too long after, and it's about Toulon being brought back to life by the puppets into a giant puppet. And he's trying to bring his girlfriend back to life, like his wife back to life, into another puppet. But a bunch of people stop that from happening because Toulon is evil. In this movie, he was a good guy in the first one. He's a bad guy in the second one. And then we get the third one, which is a prequel that shows Toulon during World War II dealing with the Nazis. And you find out that the people whose like souls he's putting inside of these puppets are all the people that he knows, like his personal friends that have been killed by the Nazis, and he's trying to help them live on through these puppets. And he's a good guy here too, and he basically takes out the Nazis, creates a new puppet named Six Shooter, which was made during World War II, but we never see it in any of the movies that came after that, which I think is kind of funny, but whatever. This is probably the best one. Well, this one is probably the best made one out of all of them. I think this one is actually a pretty decent movie. And then they shot parts 4 and 5 back to back, and I think they had more of a plot and good ideas for part 4, and all the leftovers went into 5. 4 is about a new person becoming like the puppet master, the person who can bring the puppets to life. It's this young kid who's into AI who like lives at the hotel during the off season, like, or the same hotel from the first movie. He's kind of like The Shining. He watches over the hotel during the off season. And he does all of his research while he's there, and he's like trying to make AI work and all that. And then he finds out about the puppets. And he's like, "Oh, this could be the secret thing I've been looking for, bring inanimate objects to life, kind of thing." And there's this being in another dimension named Sutek. Turns out that Toulon stole the secret of how to do this from him, and now he's trying to put a stop to it for once and for all. And it's actually really fun, and it's really fast-paced, and I actually quite like this one quite a bit. I think it's the best one since the third one. And then we had the fifth one where it's like all the leftover ideas kind of went where they're like, "Oh, well, we shot all the cool stuff for the fourth one, but the fifth one, now what do we do? Oh, we'll just have a bunch of like people go to rob the hotel while all this is happening, and it'll just be this movie that's all about people creeping through hallways in the dark very quietly, and every once in a while one of them might get killed by a puppet." It's really boring and uneventful. And then once that was over, they're going to make this movie called The Puppet Wars, but Full Moon was actually being funded by Paramount Pictures. Paramount saw the value of a direct-to-video, specifically, a specific direct-to-video market for these types of films. So they were giving Full Moon and Charles Band millions of dollars a year to just constantly be pumping out these direct-to-video films. And it shows that they actually had budgets. Well, that ended because of, I guess, Full Moon, Charles Band and Paramount had a falling out at one point. And then now Charles Band had to fund all these movies, and they were made for significantly less money. And they did not have the money to do the whole Puppet Wars idea, which sounded really epic, and I probably would have liked it. But the rest of the movies were made with Charles Band's own money, and it really shows because these are terrible. So we have Curse of the Puppet Master. Don't ask me anything about it. I hate it. I watched it once. I'll probably never watch it again. Retro Puppet Master. I think this is the one that has Greg Sestero in it from The Room, where it's another sort of like prequel kind of thing. I heard this one is terrible as well. Then there's Puppet Master, The Legacy. This one is about 20 minutes of new footage, and the rest of it is just footage from the other movies being used as flashbacks. Wow. Okay. And then we get this new trilogy that Charles Band did where it kind of goes back in time, back to like World War II, and it's all about the puppets fighting Nazis. So we have Axis of Evil. That is the first one. And I hear this one actually did pretty well. I still have not watched it. This one I hear is okay, and it kicked off this whole trilogy thing because it did so well on home video. And then I saw that this was at my local Redbox one day, and I rented it, and that is the second one in that trilogy, and that is Axis Rising. And this one is awesome. This one is it's bad. Don't get me wrong. It is freaking terrible. It is awesome because it just kind of knows what it is and it goes for it. I don't think that, Charles Band did not direct this. Someone else did. But there is these Nazis who have kidnapped this doctor who could possibly recreate Toulon's potion that he uses, or his formula that brings the puppets to life. And the thing they're using to control him is this really busty female Nazi named Ushi. Busty. To like manipulate him into doing it. And at the same time, there's these two American characters from Axis of Evil that are there to stop him. And Ushi eventually gets killed. And the doctor that's could possibly do the whole thing that Toulon does, feels so bad about her dying that he puts her into a puppet, her spirit into a puppet. And when her puppet showed up, I remember, like it happened yesterday, I'm sitting on my couch, I'm eating a curry that I had just gotten from an Indian restaurant on my coffee table. I'm watching it, and they introduced this puppet Avushi, and it looks just like her in puppet form, with big tits and everything. And I say out loud, please tell me that her tits do something. And not 3 seconds later, the brassiere that is covering her breast comes down, and there are machine gun barrels in her nipples that fire and annihilate somebody. And I was like, this is the best movie ever made. It's actually a lot of fun. It is cheap. Every set in the movie is the exact same set, just with things moved around in it. It is so cheaply made, but it's a lot of fun. And then there's the final movie, which I still have to watch, and that is Axis Termination, which I hear is actually kind of cool, which I need to watch. And it also comes with this Arcana of the Puppet Master, which is essentially like a documentary about the Puppet Master films in general. And it also comes with this booklet, Charles Band's Puppet Master. And it has like just little blurbs about each one of the films. I wonder if it has anything about Puppet Wars in here. Because I remember after one of the things that was the coolest about watching these full moon movies on VHS was it was the first time that anyone really put extras on any kind of media like this. Like we're talking like DVD style extras. There was this thing called Full Moon's Video Zone. Once the movie that you were watching was over, there was like a half-hour video magazine at the end of the movie that would tell you all about movies that were coming up from Full Moon, interviews with the actors that were in these movies, previews and stuff like that, like interviews with like the people that were working behind the scenes, all that. It was pretty cool. And I think some of these movies actually have the episodes of Video Zone on them. Yeah, I think they do. But then I would have thought, yeah, I can't talk. I always thought that was one of the coolest things about Full Moon was that they felt like the reasons they were there were because of the fans constantly renting their movies and making their stuff profitable. So they're putting these on there for the fans to have a little extra incentive to keep renting the movies. I thought it was really cool. And then now I have this. Ranma 1/2. This is a collection of all of the OVA episodes and all the theatrical movies that were released from this franchise. So I've talked about this. I talked about this in the TV on Blu-ray stream that I did. Ranma 1/2 is a sex comedy animated television show about a group of people who have been cursed, and when they are splashed with cold water, they turn into something different. And when they are splashed with hot water, they turn back into themselves. Well, the main character, Ranma, has been cursed to turn into a woman whenever he gets splashed with cold water, and back into his male form when he's splashed with hot water. And it gets in the way of his arranged marriage with this girl named Akane. And he always ends up turning into the female version of himself at the wrong time and just kind of ruins a really nice moment that they might be having and all that. And it's like it's a comedy. It's like this a lot like all the comedy in this, I guess, is like misunderstanding kind of comedy. Ranma's dad has been cursed. He turns into a panda. A bunch of people in the town have been cursed. One turns into a cat. One turns into a duck. One turns into a little potbelly pig and stuff like that. It's really funny. It was one of the first animes I really got into back in the day when anime first started to pop up in the early 90s. A friend of mine bought the first VHS tape of episodes from the television show, showed it to me, and we both got heavily into it. And then we learned about the movies. They released the movies before the show had even they'd gone through. Jeez, I can't get the burps all of a sudden. They released the movies on VHS before they were finished releasing all the episodes, which I thought was kind of strange because these pick up where the show ended, and we still have not seen the end of the show yet on our side of the ocean. So it didn't make sense that they did that, but they did. They released 3 movies, and there are 11. I think it says 11 OVAs, which were direct to video episodes that were exclusive to home video. I've seen all three of the movies. I think they're really, really fun. They got renamed. I guess they're now the subtitles that they have are closer to what they were in Japan. So the first one, when I when I owned it, it was called Ranma One Half the Movie, Big Trouble in Nekonran, China. And here it's completely different, and I cannot read it because it is so dark in here. It does not look dark in here from this. It's the camera like changing the light level, but it is actually quite dark in here. I cannot read it. It has a totally new subtitle now, and it's weird, but whatever. I picked this up because I've been buying the sets of the animated series, little like one volume at a time, and this was on sale, so I picked it up. I have 2 more volumes of the anime series to get to have everything. So that's that. And then here's a 3D trilogy, or it's not a trilogy, but like a set of 3 3D movies that is from Real D. Real D is the company that like makes the 3D glasses that you use in movie theaters. Well, they released like a set of movies on 3D Blu-ray overseas, and I think I got this from like the Netherlands or something like that. But they're region free. They work in a Blu-ray player that our Blu-ray players over here. So I picked it up because 2 of these movies are available over here in 3D. One of them was never released over here in 3D, and I found out about it long after I saw the movie. So I was really curious what it looked like. So when I saw that this is the only way you can get it, I bought it off of eBay, and it is this Real D 3D action collection. It has Immortals 3D, Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning in 3D, and Drive Angry 3D. We got Immortals and Drive Angry in 3D here. We never got the Universal Soldier movie in 3D. And I remember when I rented, this is actually Universal Soldier Part 4. When I rented Universal Soldier 4, I was like, wow, this movie actually looks like it was in 3D. The way things are framed and the way sometimes there's like the blur that happens with 3D movies when they're converted back into 2D. And I was like, this looks like it was filmed in 3D. And sure enough, I looked it up on IMDb and it was. It just was never released over here in 3D. So this is the only, like I said, the only way you can actually watch it. The 3D sucks, by the way. The movie's not great either. The only movie on this set that I actually kind of like is Immortals. That's one of Henry Cavill's first big leading roles. It's from Tarsem Singh, the guy who directed The Cell, which I think is a great visual stylist, even though Mickey Rourke as the villain is really miscast. Drive Angry 3D I saw in the theater when I was unemployed. My parents were like, oh, let's cheer Chris up. Let's go take him to see a movie. And I know he likes Nicolas Cage movies. We'll go see that. And we saw in the theater. I was like, that was shit. It has Amber Heard in it. How good can it be? Yeah. But yeah, the Universal Soldier in 3D does not hold up at all in 3D. It does not look great. And the only way I watch these is in my PSVR headset. So, yeah, Immortals is the only one that I say is actually a decent movie on there. This one I picked up at Half Price Books. This is a double pack of The Rescuers, the 35th anniversary edition, and The Rescuers Down Under, 2 Disney animated films about these adventuring mice. And one of them, I think, is Zsa Zsa Gabor. And I think the other one is, God, what's his name? Comedian, had his own television show. Damn it. I want to say Benson, but that's not it. God damn it. Oh, man. That's going to drive me crazy. I can't read the font, the type on here because it's so goddamn small. Whatever. I saw the original Rescuers in the theater. I don't know if it was like the original release. It might have been like a re-release. And I remember really liking it. And it does hold up. I watched it maybe like 2 years ago, and I think it's still pretty fun. The second one came out like in the 90s, and it actually used some CGI for some of the animation. Like there's this golden eagle that the characters are after. And whenever you see it, it's like a CGI character. And it looks animated. It looks like it's hand animated, but you can tell there's just something different about it, from the way it looks. And I think it works really well. It's actually a pretty fun movie as well. But had to pick this one up just for the nostalgic memories. Here's a movie that my parents used to watch all the time. My dad specifically thought this was like one of the best movies ever made. I tend to agree. I think it's pretty awesome. And that is The Right Stuff. This was like this epic movie by Philip Kaufman that came out like in the early 80s. And from what I remember hearing, it bombed hard. Like this movie cost a lot of money to make. It was really long. I think this was like 3 hours. And it bombed hard. It's such a long movie that it came on 2 Blu-rays. Did it? Oh, no. You got the feature, and then you got a Blu-ray of the extras. I remember my dad had this on VHS. That came on 2 VHS tapes. It was such a long movie. But it's about like the beginnings of the space program in the 50s and 60s. And I think it's actually a pretty awesome movie. I remember watching this. Fred Ward is in it. Dennis Quaid. And it's pretty rad. Scott Glenn. And it actually comes with this letter from Philip Kaufman talking about making the movie and thanking you for buying this director's approved version of the movie. And this is one of those Warner Brothers sets that has like a book built into the packaging. So you've got like little essays and behind the scenes footage, pictures in the book, which is kind of awesome. I need to watch that again. I have not seen that probably for 15 years. Pick this one up because I love it, and it's in 3D. And this is, I think, the only way you could get this movie in 3D. And I did not see this. I saw this in the theater twice. I saw it once opening night in 2D with my friends. The friends that I saw it with can't really handle 3D. Like it gives them like a headache when they watch it. So we saw it in 2D. But then like a week later, I went to visit my brother in LA, and he wanted to go and see it. He hadn't seen the movie yet. And he's like, hey, it's playing at Grauman's Chinese Theater in like laser 3D or something. It's supposed to be like the super sharp picture 3D. And he's like, let's go see it there. And I'm like, okay, fine. And watching this in 3D on that screen in that theater was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, especially when it comes to certain shots at the end in 3D. I thought it blew my mind. So I made a real effort to get this in 3D at home. And that is Rogue One, the Star Wars story, the first Star Wars spin-off movie that Disney produced. And I think still the best. I love this one. I thought it was a fantastic movie. What I wanted from the sequel trilogy, I got in the spin-off movies. They didn't have to follow any rules in the sequel trilogy. They could have done whatever they wanted. They didn't have. It wasn't like the prequels where they had to get from a point in time to a specific point at the beginning of Episode 4. With these, they could do whatever with the sequels, they could do whatever they wanted, and they just decided to remake the old movies. When it came to the spin-off, like the little side story movies, they went into different genres. And I thought that was fantastic. You do whatever you want with these. It doesn't have to just be about lightsabers and shit and the Skywalkers. You can do whatever you want. Rogue One is a freaking Vietnam War movie, but a sci-fi version. And it's awesome. I absolutely love it. The big space battle stuff from the end of the movie that takes place above whatever the name of that planet was, where the crew of the Rogue One were trying to steal the plans, like the whole Stardust thing. That space battle, there's these shots of X-Wings coming out of hyperspace where the camera is like placed over one of the wings of an X-Wing. That coming out of hyperspace above the planet in 3D, I was like, that is one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen. And just the way it was framed and everything, like it was framed with 3D in mind, and it worked great. This is the only way you can get it in 3D on Blu-ray, is this gigantic box set. And if I remember correctly, it sold out like instantly in stores. I went to 4 different stores looking for this, and it was completely sold out everywhere. So you get the movie on DVD, you get a bonus Blu-ray, you get the movie on a Blu-ray, you get the movie in 3D Blu-ray, and then you get another movie or another disc that's all extras. This thing is huge. And I love that it comes with like Jyn Erso on the cover. But it also has like all of these removable, like these lobby cards that come with it. They have all the characters on it. So you got Jyn Erso, and then you got Cassian Andor and KSO. You got, was it Baz? And I can Chirrut, I think the other one's name was. And what is this? Take your movie to go. Here's a code for a digital version. And then there's Krennic and his Death Troopers. And then you got oh God, what was his freaking name? Saw Gerrera. I can never remember this dude's character's name. But the thing is, you can slip any of them in the front here and have that be what the cover of your movie is. So I could actually have them as the cover, but I always have Jyn because I thought Jyn was a great, great character. So I leave her in the front. But this is probably my favorite of all of the Disney-produced Star Wars films. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. A lot of my friends, a couple of my friends think that this is one of the worst things ever made. I was like, you know what? I was just hoping to get something different and not just a repeat of what's come before. And with this, we definitely did not get a repeat. This was something totally new, and I love it for that. I absolutely love it. So, Rogue One. And then this double pack has Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile in it. These were adventure movies. First one kicked off Robert Zemeckis' career. He would never have made Back to the Future if Romancing the Stone was not a hit. So these are like adventure romance movies that, if you ever saw that movie with Sandra Bullock and Daniel Radcliffe and, oh God, what was that guy's name? I can't remember what it was called. Like, I saw it like 2 years ago. It's basically a remake of Romancing the Stone. So a novelist who writes like these romance novels about like some swashbuckling type of hero romancing women, she ends up getting caught up in this like thing with some, I think they were drug dealers and the Bolivian military. One of them her sister gets kidnapped, and she has to bring a map that was mailed to her by her sister before she got kidnapped to these people that have taken her. And along the way, she meets this dude it's Kathleen Turner who plays the novelist, and Michael Douglas plays this like drifter guy that she meets along the way, and they go on all these weird adventures and fall in love and all that. It's actually pretty cool. And because it was such a huge hit, they fast-tracked a sequel that came out less than a year later that Robert Zemeckis had nothing to do with, called Jewel of the Nile, and it is really bad. It is like really bad. You can tell the actors don't want to be there because they're already going to be going on to different things, but they're like contractually obligated to do this. And it's like Danny DeVito, Michael Douglas, and Kathleen Turner. It's not fun. The first one is, I think, a really great action adventure romance type movie that I get a kick out of. Saw that in the theater. Another one of those movies that had a moment in it I probably should not have seen at the age. That came out like in 84. I want to say 1984. And you get to watch an alligator not just rip a guy's hand off, but bite this guy's hand at the wrist and like grind it, like moving its head back and forth to like loosen it and then rip it off. And then the guy's running around with like this bloody, it's a PG rated movie, but the guy's running around with this like bloody stump shooting blood all over the freaking place for like the next 5 minutes. It's like, what? Yeah, it scarred me, but it didn't stop me from watching it all the time on home video. Here's a triple feature of Samuel L. Jackson movies. And I actually like all three. And it's Deep Blue Sea, The Long Kiss Goodnight, and Snakes on a Plane. I saw each of these movies in the theater. Absolutely love each one of them. Deep Blue Sea is a really fun, like shark on the loose type of movie that takes place in this like underwater research facility. It has a pretty decent cast. I saw it in the theater, I think, twice. I saw it once by myself, and I was like, that was actually really fun. And then my mom ended up having surgery, and I took her to go and see it, and she looked like she had a good time too, even though she's not really into like horror movies and stuff. But even though the CGI sharks look pretty shitty, I think it's a really fun like action movie. Rennie Harlan knows how to do action pretty well, and I think he handled it pretty well here too. And then we have Long Kiss Goodnight, which is another Rennie Harlan movie. This is when he was married to Geena Davis, and he was putting her in every movie that he was in or that he directed. This is the movie my entire family watches every Christmas. Everyone has like a Christmas, like a traditional Christmas movie that they watch. Like some people watch Die Hard, some people watch Christmas Story, some people watch Christmas Vacation. We watch Long Kiss Goodnight because it is a Christmas movie. It takes place during Christmas, and it has some of the best like lines of dialogue, like funny lines of dialogue in it. Same guy who wrote the Long Kiss, Long Kiss. The Last Boy Scout that I talked about earlier wrote Long Kiss Goodnight. Shane Black. And Sam Jackson gets all the good lines in it. Like he drew like this thing that looks like a duck in a pad of paper, and one guy pats him down at one point, finds the pad of paper and looks at it, and he goes, "Why did you draw a dick on this?" He goes, "That's a duck, not a dick." It's just stuff like that cracks me up. What was the other one? So the whole idea behind it is Geena Davis is this woman who has like no memory. Anything that's before like the last 7 years, she has no memory of. She's like a school teacher. Turns out she used to be an assassin, and she got shot in the head and lost her memory. And all the people that she was working for and was targeting when she was still an assassin come after her when they realize that she's still out there, but they don't realize that she has no memory of her past. I can't fucking talk. I'm running out of breath too. So once she gets all of her memories back, she goes back into assassin mode, and she tries to seduce Samuel L. Jackson at one point. And she like leans him up against the wall, and she's like trying to kiss him, and he goes, "Baby, I ain't good looking, I ain't rich, and the last time I got blown, candy bars cost a nickel." It's super funny. And then you have Snakes on a Plane, which is one of those movies that everyone online was like hyped about it. Everyone wanted to see it, and then when it came out in the theaters, nobody went and saw it. Sam Jackson said he wouldn't do the movie unless the title of it was Snakes on a Plane, which is what the script was called. They were talking about retitling it before it got released, and Sam Jackson's like, take my freaking name off the movie if you're going to change the name. I did it because you called it Snakes on a Plane originally. And it is a piece of shit. It's kind of boring for the first half hour, but once the snakes get loose on the plane, the movie gets really, really funny. Turn this big motherfucker left. You know that. I really got a kick out of it. And when it ended, I saw it in the theater. When it ended, I want to say I saw it on a Saturday afternoon, and the theater was maybe half full. And when it ended, I stood up, and I said just loud enough that everyone could hear me, and I was like, that movie sucked so good. And I got a good round of laughter from everybody. Here is the 7-film set of all the Saw movies. Not all of them now. Now we've got 10 of them. But you got Saw 1 and 2 on one disc, Saw 3, 4, and 5 on another. And then Saw 6 and 7, the quote-unquote final chapter. But this series goes by Friday the 13th rules. You call something the final chapter. It's not over. Not by a long shot. They have tried to reboot this franchise so many times, or restart it so many times, and it didn't take until recently. So I have seen every Saw movie in the theater. I remember I saw a trailer for Saw back when it was first coming out, and it was like this really rough one. I don't know if it was made for the U.S. or it was made for another country, because the trailer showed the whole bear trap scene, and then right before you see, oh God, what was her freaking name? Amanda go to like stab the guy with the knife. It goes, how fucked up? It even said on the screen, how fucked up is that? Saw coming soon. And I was like, I don't know, but I want to see that real bad. I saw it in the theater like opening weekend, and I wasn't all that hip on it. I thought it was kind of like okay. I thought the twist at the end was really stupid. But I watched it again when it came out on home video, and I was like, okay. I guess my expectations were too high when I saw that trailer, because it was like the movie itself is honestly not gory at all. Everything is left to your imagination, kind of like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like you know what's going to happen, and then your brain fills in the blanks. Like the bear trap thing, like when Amanda goes to stab that guy to get the key out of his abdomen, you just see the hand going up and down into frame, and you just kind of see blood coming off the knife. You never see her stab the guy. You never see like anything of her opening him up, and like, so you see her like moving the guy's like intestines through her fingers, but it's the same shot from when she was stabbing the guy. You see her kind of like moving her hands through it, but like that's probably the goriest thing in the movie. One guy gets shot in the head. All the other murders in the movie kind of happen off screen. Carrie Elwes with the foot thing, you see him start, but you never actually see anything else happen. It's like a lot of it's just like left off the screen for you to fill in the blanks with your imagination, which I really like. When I saw it the second time, I really liked that. And it kind of made more sense to me. So I was like, hey, part 2, go to see part 2. I'm like, yeah, that was okay. And the thing is, like, you watch part 2 a second time, and you start to realize that each one of the traps had an out. That if the person that was going to participate in that trap or try to get the item they needed from within that trap, all they had to do was stop and like look around and think about it for a minute, and they would have figured out that, oh, that furnace, all I had to do was break that window in the back, and I could have just reached in and grabbed that key I need. Oh, that girl that gets her hand stuck in those bladed, like little glove ports in that glass box. If you look, there's a key in the back that she could have just twisted and opened it up from the back and reached in and grabbed the syringe that she needed or whatever. It's like that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's kind of clever. I like that they did that. So I went and saw the third one. The third one is gory as all hell. That is one of the nastiest ones in the series. But it kind of like ended the franchise a little bit. Like, you killed the main bad guy. Well, they kept it going. And like as the movies went, they just started getting, from that point, I thought they started getting like worse and worse. Like, I think part 4 is just kind of okay. Part 5, I think, is shit. Part 6, on the other hand, is the first one where they actually try to insert some like social commentary into the story, where it's all about how bullshit the healthcare is in the U.S. And I thought that was really cool. I really liked the 6th one. because of that. I was like, they finally decided to like start saying something in these movies. That's exactly what they needed. And then we got part 7. So 1, 2, and 3, like the grosses just went up and up and up and up. Part 4, I think they kind of plateaued, and then 5 and then 6 went really down. So they were like, well, we had 3 more movies planned after this, after part 6, because they're going to release 9 total. That was the plan. Well, part 6 kind of underperformed. So how about we make 1 more movie, go out in a bang. We'll combine these 3 scripts we have for the next 3 movies into 1 movie and end it there. And then make it in 3D so we can charge extra money, for your ticket. And that's what the 7th movie feels like. It feels like 3 movies combined into 1. There's like a cop there that does not need to be there. There's these cop characters. They are not developed at all. They're just kind of there. There's the whole thing going on with Kramer's wife, and then the guy who's taking over for Jigsaw, and all these other characters, and then all these random trap scenes, like Chester Bennington rips his own back off because he's been glued to a car chair. It makes, like, those don't need to be there. Yeah, they're staples of the series, but it just kind of like, it feels like just it was being made up as it went. And then, like, it's just wrapped up way too neat at the very end. But it's still kind of left open for more because there's a couple of characters still left alive after it. And that's where they kept on going with the other movies in the franchise. And then part 10 is the only one that kind of got it right. So I felt like I should just buy this for the hell of it. I have the 7th movie separate on a Blu-ray, a 3D Blu-ray. But the 3D in that is not great. You can tell they were just kind of rushing it. Here's a double pack from Screen Factory. That is Scanners 2 and 3. These were made back-to-back in Canada by this dude named Christian Duguay, who I think is one of the biggest hacks that works in film. I kind of like Scanners 2. That's the reason I have this box set, is because I think Scanners 2 is actually kind of cool, even though it does feel really cheap. But Scanners 3 is one of the worst things ever. These are sequels to the David Cronenberg movie. They pick up with the kids of the main characters from the first movie who have inherited their parents' powers, and they're trying to stop this corporation from like utilizing scanners to like take over. And then the third movie, which is completely unrelated to any of the characters from the first 2 movies, this like brother and sister who are both scanners. Their dad works for this company who's developing a cure for scanners, so like to turn it off, but it's not been perfected yet. And the sister decides to like say, well, the hell with the FDA testing, I'm just going to use it. And she puts it on her neck, and it drives her crazy, and she goes on a killing spree. And it is super dumb. Her acting is the worst I've ever seen. Turns out she's the wife of the director. That's why she's in the movie. Her name is Liliana Koromowska or something like that. And she's one of the worst actresses of all time. And she ruins the third movie, even though it does have a really cool exploding head scene. Here's a 5 film set of the Scream movies, even though it does not have 5 films in it. It has 5 discs in it. That's what it should say. It has the first 3 Scream movies plus 2 feature-length documentaries. One is called Still Screaming, and then the other one is Scream: The Inside Story. But yeah, I have not gotten the Scream movies on 4K yet until they release like a big box set, because they've got 6 of them now. I'm not going to just buy them individually. But yeah, here you go. First 3 Screams and these 2 documentaries, which I still have yet to watch. But I hear they're actually really good. When it comes to the first 3 Screams, I love the first one. I still think it's a great slasher parody kind of thing, and very meta, like I said before. Second one was one of those movies that was rushed to be in theaters like less than a year after the first one came out, because the first one was such a surprise hit. Let's hit it. Let's like strike the match while it's still hot kind of thing. And I think it's not nearly as good. The people who end up being the killers, I think, are really, one of them is really predictable, and the other one is just kind of like, what? Who are you? I don't like a lot of the characters in the second one. I think they killed off my favorite character, Randy. And it's just kind of like, it felt rushed and kind of like dumb. Like, I didn't think it was entertaining. Part 3 is the one everyone has a problem with. I like part 3 a lot. I like that it takes place in Hollywood while they're making these movies that are based on what happened in the first movie, and it's making fun of Hollywood at the same time. So it's got that meta thing going on again. And the way they tie up all the loose ends with the killer being who he is in the end of the third one, I think wraps the whole series up pretty well. I think it could have just ended there. And like all of the loose ends are tied up. It should be done. But they decided to make a fourth one like 10 years later. And don't get me wrong, I do like the fourth one. I'm not a fan of the fifth or sixth, but like so far, this is all I have right now. I have 4 separately. I don't plan on buying 5 and 6 because I don't like them very much. But it's cool to have that. I do need to watch those documentaries. Here is a complete set of all 6 Sharknado films. I did not realize that they had made 6 of these until I went to Half Price Books. I want to say maybe a year before I saw this set. And I saw Sharknado 5, but the S at the beginning of Sharknado was a 5. And I was like, they made 5 of those? I thought they stopped at 3. And then I learned after that there was even another one after that. So they made 2 trilogies. But I saw the first 3. And I think the first 3, while they are all shitty as hell, they are really shitty. They are a lot of fun, especially the third one. I thought the third one was so much fun with the whole thing at the White House. Mark Cuban is president and all that. And then Salt and Pepper show up, or no, was it just Salt or just Pepper? One of the two ladies from Salt and Pepper is in it. And oh God, what's her name? She's on the new season. She was in the last season of Star Trek Picard. Tretta. Oh, I can't remember what her name is. Damn it. And I can't read the font. You read that font for all the credits there. That is so freaking tiny. How do you expect me to read that? I cannot remember her name. Scream Queen from like the 80s and 90s. She's in the third one, and she's probably the best actress out of them all, out of everybody in it. Well, I can act better than Tara Reid. But was it Ian Ziering? He looks like he's entertaining. He's having fun making these movies. I can't comment for the second 3. So you got Sharknado 1, 2, the second one, Sharknado 3. Oh, hell no. The subtitles were so stupid. Sharknado, The Fourth Awakens. That's kind of funny. Sharknado, Global Swarming. And then the last Sharknado, It's About Time. When the second one was coming out, they had a contest online to make the subtitle. Like submit your idea for what the subtitle for part 2 should be. And I subtitled Sharknado 2 After Sharks, which I thought and a bunch of my friends thought was funny, but they decided to go with the second one. Okay. Fun movies. I need to watch the last 3. Like I said, I've only seen the first 3. And then this is just a weird packaging, so I have it with all these box sets. That is The Social Network. This is David Fincher's movie about the making of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg. And I think it's a pretty awesome movie. Introduced me to Andrew Garfield, who ended up playing Spider-Man after this. And I already knew about Jesse Eisenberg. He was pretty rad. But I think the thing that surprised me the most was that Trent Reznor did the score for this movie and then won an Oscar for it. It's a really great movie. It's kind of hard to watch at times when you see people just being shitty to other people, which is something I'm not a fan of. And but it's a great movie. This is one of 2 movies that David Fincher has made that I accidentally skipped in theaters. I just could not get away to go and see this in the theaters. This and Gone Girl were the only 2 Fincher movies I have not seen in the theater. But I was really sad about it. But when I watched it on home video, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. And who thought a movie about Facebook would be any good? And that David Fincher would want to make it. But after watching, you're like, okay, I get it. Talking about that Rogue One in 3D, that big box set. Well, the only way you could get The Force Awakens in 3D, which I also saw the previous year that I saw Rogue One at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in that laser 3D. I saw The Force Awakens there in 3D the year before when I visited my brother. So naturally, I want to have the 3D version of it, but this is the only way you can get it. This collector's edition of Star Wars The Force Awakens, and it has like this lithograph 3D cover, which I think is pretty awesome. Cover, I think, is better than the movie. That comes in this big outer box with shots from the film in it, or on it. And open it up, and you got a picture of Han Solo and Chewie. Open it up even further. Got this whole panorama view of the inside of the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And then same thing here. You got a DVD You got the movie on Blu-ray, the movie on 3D Blu-ray, and then one dedicated specifically to extras. And I was really. Everyone was like, when it came to the reviews I was reading of this when it came out, I was really hyped for it. I did not like any of the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. So when I heard we were getting these like sequel trilogy, I was just kind of like, yay, I'll go see it, but I'm not excited about it. And I really wasn't. Even after I saw the trailers, I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, I'll see it, but I'm not getting excited for it. But when I started reading the reviews, and everyone was like, this is like the best Star Wars movie since like Empire Strikes Back kind of thing. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And then I saw like a review by Patton Oswalt, and he's like, JJ did it. He fucking did it. He made it. Star Wars is back. And I was like, okay. I started to get excited. And then I go and watch it. I'm like, wow, it's a remake of A New Hope. So I was really disappointed. So I ended up seeing it twice in the theater. No, sorry, 3 times in the theater. I saw it opening night with my friends, and then I saw it with my brother in LA on that laser 3D screen at Grandma's Chinese Theater. And then I ended up going to see it at a really kind of far out of the way theater that had D-Box, which is the chairs move with what's going on in the movie. And I was like, I think it was the first movie I saw in D-Box. Was it? No, Dredd was. Yeah, the Judge Dredd. Yeah, the Judge Dredd movie with Carl Urban in it. That was the first one I saw. But I wanted to see it in D-Box, so I drove all the way out there to see it, and it was pretty cool. But still, I can't say that I think this one is very good. And you're all gonna think I'm an idiot, but the only sequel movie that I like of the sequel trilogy is Last Jedi, the one that everybody hates, because it played things differently, which is what I wanted out of those movies. You could have done anything you wanted. You had no boundaries. You could have done whatever the hell you wanted. And they remade A New Hope. No thanks. Here is a 2-pack of action movies from, what is it, Sony? Columbia Pictures? I don't know what these 2 movies have in common. I bought it for one. It came with the other. But this has Vertical Limit and Stealth. Vertical Limit is the movie I bought this for. Stealth is just here. Vertical Limit is by Campbell. Oh God, what's his name? Martin Campbell directed GoldenEye, directed Casino Royale. He was the Mark of Zorro. He was this great action director who like revitalized Bond not once but twice. Brought him back from the dead. And then he made this like movie about scaling a mountain and trying to rescue a bunch of people who were trapped by an avalanche. And it's actually pretty good, although I'm not a big fan of like Chris O'Donnell, but it has Bill Paxton in it and Robin Tunney and the guy that played Dr. Bashir on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It has a really good cast. It has a lot of really great stunts, a lot of great action scenes. But then again, a lot of the characters act really stupid. Like, oh, I'm carrying nitro up this mountain. And people say, don't jostle it around too much. Don't let it get into the sun. All those kinds of... And then, like, people are just, like, doing the opposite. One guy, like, does not realize that it's leaking, that the canister is leaking, and it leaks into the sun, and he gets blown up. Okay. And then Stealth is by the guy who directed the first Fast and Furious. What's his name? Rob Cohen. He did the first Fast and the Furious, the third Mummy movie, the one with Brendan Fraser, but with Maria Bello instead of Rachel Weisz. Triple X with Vin Diesel. I don't think he's a particularly good director. But this movie was like, he had done Fast and the Furious. That was a huge hit. He did Triple X. That was another huge hit. So he basically got carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wanted for his next movie. And this is what Stealth ended up being. And it is like this CGI nonsensical nightmare about an AI plane that gets sentient when it gets struck by lightning and then goes off and decides, I'm going to go and blow up a country. And all these other pilots, which are Jessica Biel, Jamie Foxx, and Josh Lucas, go after it to stop it. It is so dumb. It has a couple of cool action scenes. One of them is kind of like watching Jaws, where like the plane that they're chasing is like hiding in the clouds, and you just see the top of its fin going across the clouds like Jaws, like the shark fin. Every once in a while, I was like, that was kind of cool, but the rest of it is just stupid. And we're talking about Full Moon. I have a bunch of sets of Full Moon films, and this one includes... No, this does not have that one in it. I'm sorry. I think I have that elsewhere. So this has one of the earlier full moon movies in it and one of the later ones before they lost their deal with Paramount. And that is The Pit and the Pendulum and Castle Freak. The thing that ties these two together is they're both directed by Stuart Gordon, the guy who did Reanimator and From Beyond. Pit and the Pendulum is the Edgar Allan Poe story made into a film, and it's kind of like a black comedy. It's one of the few of them that I have not seen. And then Castle Freak is based off of another H.P. Lovecraft story. Stuart Gordon loves H.P. Lovecraft. And it's about like this deformed person that's been chained to a wall in the basement of this cave that this family inherits. And then it gets loose when the new family moves into the castle and decides to have a sexual awakening with the female members of the family and eat other people. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Not my favorite. I bought this because I'm trying to get all the full moon movies on Blu-ray, but Charles Band is not releasing them fast enough for my liking. But I wanted it because I've never seen Pit and the Pendulum, so that's why I bought it. Castle Freak is not one of my favorites. These are, though. I just brought this over to my buddy Ryan, Rocket Sauce from the Cartridge Club's house. We watched the first movie in this series on, what was it, Friday night before the Midwest Gaming Classic, and that is the Subspecies, the first 3 films in the Subspecies franchise. These are low-budget vampire movies, but I think they do really creative things with vampire lore, which is why I like them so much. The first film is cool. It's a little slow. I could feel that Ryan and his buddy Rob were kind of like not into it all that much because it is really slow. I kept on saying while we were watching, I was like, if you want to watch the second movie, that's where it's at. So there's this thing called the Bloodstone that's been added into vampire lore in these movies. And it's like an artificial blood source for vampires. You can go for a long time without having to feed on a person, on a human, by drinking the artificial blood from this like supernatural thing called the Bloodstone. And the thing is, the more you drink it, or the more you use it, you kind of become dependent on it and kind of like addicted to it. And then eventually, if you can't get to it, you can go like into like a rage and just like go on a murder spree. And it's about this these 2 vampire brothers. One of them looks like this horrific vampire with long ass fingers and fangs, and he's always in vampire mode. And his brother, who looks human all the time, who are feuding over the Bloodstone and these women that get in the way. Second one is like they filmed 2 and 3 back to back. The second one is my favorite, and it kind of picks up right where the first movie left off. And Radu, the evil vampire character, is going after the human vampire brother's girlfriend, who has been turned into a vampire at the end of the first movie. And it's about him like tormenting her and trying to like turn her to his side while chasing her across the countryside. And it's actually really good. And then you have Bloodlust Part 3, which is like the follow-up to that. That's basically the movie ends like at the halfway point and picks up there at the beginning of 3 and finishes off that storyline. And it's okay. It's just another thing like with these full moon movies, like I said with Puppet Master 4 and 5, which were shot back-to-back as well. It's like all the good ideas were in the first one of those 2 that were shot back-to-back, and all the crappy ideas were put into the second one, which the same thing kind of goes here. All the cool stuff is in Bloodstone. All the leftovers are in Bloodlust. But Bloodstone and Bloodlust do feature William Shatner's daughter in it. They also made a 4th movie in the series and a 5th movie in the series and a spin-off. That's one of the flagship franchises from Full Moon. Then I have this Superman motion picture anthology box set. This covers 78 to 2006. So it has Superman 1, 2, 3, 4, and Returns in it. And I did not buy the 4K of any of these movies. They released a box set that had 1, 2, 3, and 4 in it in 4K, but I hear the transfers were absolutely horrendous. And plus, they don't have the extra cuts that this box set has. I mean, look at all these damn discs. Each movie has like a director's cut version, except for Part 3. So, one disc you have Superman the movie, the original 1978 theatrical release. The second disc is Superman the movie, the expanded edition, which is kind of like the television version, has all these extra scenes put back in. The movie's a lot better that way. Don't get me wrong. The theatrical cut is great. The expanded edition makes the movie even better. Just more space for the actors to breathe and the story to expand a little bit more. It's great. Then disc 3 has the original 1980 theatrical release of Superman 2. I love Superman 2. Out of all the movies in this set, Superman 2 is my favorite. It's Fun. It's a little campy. Has probably the most action. I love that it's like Superman versus the Kryptonian criminal trio. I absolutely love it. I love the romance thing going on with Lois, that, Superman gives up his powers to be with her and realizes he effed up and has to kind of beg to get his powers back at the end so he can save the world. Love it. Absolutely love it. But it also has on disc 4 the 2006 Richard Donner cut. So the way this happened was, we're also talking about movies being filmed back to back yet again. Superman 1 and 2 were being shot back to back. They're supposed to be released about a year apart. About halfway, they had finished filming everything they needed for the first film. They were halfway through shooting the second film when the producers, the Salkinds, were like, look, we need to get something in theaters so we can start making some money back at this point. Go and focus. It's like, we're gonna halt filming. We're gonna go and edit together the first movie, get that finished, get it into theaters, and then we'll come back and finish the second movie. And Richard Donner, who was directing both movies, was like, okay, fine. They released the first movie. It's this huge hit. The Salkinds made all this kind of money. All of a sudden, they don't want to pay Richard Donner to finish the second movie. And they fired him. And they brought in this guy that they worked with on these Three Musketeers movies that they made like 5 years prior to like finish the movie. But he didn't film enough new material to have his name put on the... No, he did. He filmed 51% of the footage in the movie. So Richard Lester got sole directorial credit. And I think Donner is credited like in the special thanks at the end of the movie. A lot of Donner's stuff is in there, but the majority of it is this Richard Lester stuff. When Richard Donner went back and put his cut of the movie together, it is the cheesiest. Like, they were trying to avoid cheese with the theatrical version of the first film and the extended version. The first movie was supposed to be cheese-free, and I thought it pretty much was. Part 2 is all cheese. I don't know what the hell was going on. Richard Donner decided to throw in all these really bad CGI edits. Yeah, they were able to put Marlon Brando back into the movie, but like they didn't want to pay Richard Donner anymore for finishing up the second movie. They didn't want to have to pay Marlon Brando all those millions of dollars to be in the second movie. So they cut all of his stuff out and put the woman who played his wife in it instead. And they put all of while having all of Marlon Brando's stuff in the second version, the second movie is kind of cool. Everything else is just super freaking cheesy. Like, they make Zod out to be like a clown instead of scary. And they used like, what was it, like screen tests for some scenes because they didn't want to use the scenes from the Lester version of the movie. So Richard Donner's like, the only thing I personally filmed were these like screen tests with Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve. So we'll use that instead, but it's just bad. It is so bad. I hate it. Hate it. Part 3 gets its own disc. Part 4 gets its own disc, but the Part 4 has like deleted scenes in it that would have made the movie like over 2 hours long, but Part 4 was going to be a terrible movie no matter what. And then disc 7 has Superman Returns, and Superman Returns has the entire opening space scene that was cut out of the movie for time that cost them like, what was it, like $25 million? And he just, like, what's his name? Bryan Singer, who directed it, cut this whole $25 million section out of the movie for time because why not? And all he did was like put this little like title screen that says Superman went looking for what was left of Krypton and never came back. Instead of showing this really awesome scene of him like actually flying through the remains of Krypton trying to find any survivors, which I thought was rad. And then disc 8 is a bonus disc that has like tons and tons of extras. You can see everything listed here. It's a cool set that I refuse to get rid of because of those 4K sets I hear are absolute. The 4K set is actually, I hear, it's garbage. And then here is a triple feature set again. This is all 3 of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. I really like the first one. The first one I still think holds up completely. They went dark like the comic books, but still put the comedy in there from the cartoon for the kids. But I think it's a really good mix of the comics and the cartoons. And it's really well cast, too. And then we got the rushed to theater sequel, part 2, The Secret of the Ooze, that came out less than a year after the first one. And it shows everything's a lot cheaper. And it's like, it just feels like it was made up as they went. I don't think it's a complete movie to me. It feels really rushed and really kind of dumb. And then we have the third movie, which everybody hates, which kind of borrows from the Turtles arcade game, Turtles in Time. And it actually has Turtles in Time as the subtitle here, even though it wasn't in the movie when you see it. But the turtles find this like lantern that sends them back to like feudal Japan, and they end up having like battles with samurais and this like this British dude who's trying to sell guns to the warlords and all that. And it's kind of okay. I think it's better than the second one, but the first one is still my favorite. And then we have this other double feature from Scream Factory. This has a Terror Vision is a movie by Empire Pictures, which was Charles Band of Full Moon's previous company, where he was making theatrical releases instead of direct-to-video stuff. Terror Vision was one of their big bombs, and The Video Dead is like I think it was a direct-to-video movie, but I always saw it at the video store I worked at. Never ended up renting it, so I still have not watched it. I need to check it out to see if it's any good. But that artwork is pretty rad of the zombie coming out of the TV. Terror Vision is like this really cheesy, silly, kind of farcical movie about this family who's like obsessed with watching television, and they buy this really oversized like satellite dish to get all these new channels. And what they end up doing is pulling in like an alien signal that actually has an alien in the signal, and it comes out of their television and like starts absorbing everybody. It's really kind of stupid. I don't know if it's trying to be funny or like if it's trying to be a parody of something or what. It's just really weird and bizarre, and some of the stuff in it doesn't work, but some of it is actually kind of funny. Like I still haven't made up my mind on that. There's another trilogy of Full Moon films, and it's the Trancers Squid Pack. Trancers was another one of the franchises that made up Full Moon, that made Full Moon as popular as it was in the 90s. Trancers actually came out in the 80s as an Empire theatrical film, and then Charles Band resurrected it as direct-to-video films for Full Moon, and starting off with part 2. Trancers is a ripoff of The Terminator, kind of. This dude who starts off in the far future. There's this criminal named Whistler who can turn everyday people into like these murderous zombies. And this cop named Jack Death, who's played by Tim Thomerson here, has been tracking him for years. And turns out that Whistler has sent his consciousness into the past. And the way time travel works here is you physically don't travel to the past. Your consciousness does. You travel the way they call it. You travel down the line. You actually, your consciousness will inhabit one of your ancestors' bodies in the past. And you basically just push their personality and consciousness aside, and yours takes over. So Whistler has put his consciousness into one of his ancestors in the mid-'80s, and he's going to try to do his transfer thing there and take over the world in the past and kill all the people on the council who have like signed his death warrant. He's trying to erase them from history so that he can take over without any problems. Jack Death has to go back in time the same way to stop him, and he ends up getting stuck in the past in his ancestor's body, and that's where the sequels kind of pick up. First one is a really fun movie. Helen Hunt is in it. It was one of her first movies. She did it way before she did Mad About You or Twister or any of those things. And then the 2 sequels on here, there was actually more than 2. Trancers 2, The Return of Jack Death, and 3, Death Lives. 2 was directed by Charles Band, and it is horrible. I think it's horrible. I think it is one of the worst things ever made from Full Moon. It's one of those things that feels completely made up on the spot. It feels super cheap. I don't like the cinematography. Like, for some reason, Charles Band thought it was a good idea to put the camera right in an actor's face and have them look into the camera while they're saying their dialogue. And it's like, it's really off-putting. The only time I think that works is if a character is breaking the fourth wall, like in a Deadpool movie, or if it's Silence of the Lambs, when they're trying to creep you out by having Hannibal Lecter look you in the eye while he's saying all this weird shit. But here, it's just like, I don't know how basic cinematography works. I'm just going to put the camera here. Just look into the camera and say your lines. And it's horrible. It's bad acting all around. I think it's just really dialogue, some of the worst dialogue in history. So the idea behind the sequel is the brother of Whistler from the first movie has come down the line and is trying to do the whole Trancers thing again, but he's doing it through like weed. And the reason Jack was going after Whistler in the first movie was he murdered his wife. Well, it turns out his wife didn't die. His wife was actually sent down the line the way he was before him, and in order to not alarm Jack about that, they said that she was killed by Whistler. And she's in the same time period that the first movie took place in. But now Jack is married to Helen Hunt's character, and he finds out that his wife is alive in the past with him, and it's like this weird love triangle thing going on between the three of them. It's really creepy because the body that Jack's wife is inhabiting in the past is like a 16-year-old girl, and Tim Thomerson is like in his 50s, and it's kind of gross. And when Helen Hunt's character walks in on him kissing his wife, she's like, what the hell? And Jack says, don't jump to conclusions. And she goes, you're the one doing all the jumping, Jack. And it's like her delivery is like she forgot her line halfway through saying it, but they left it in the film because we're making this movie really cheap and we can't afford to spend all that money on film. So whatever we get on film is what we use. Like, you're doing all the jumping, Jack. Transfers 3 is actually really cool. Transfers 3 is like a really dark, gritty kind of action thriller where Jack has to kind of go into like undercover at this place where this military guy has gotten a hold of the transfer technology and is trying to use it to make super soldiers, and Jack has to get in there and stop it from happening. And that one's actually pretty cool. And then they made 2 more that they shot back to back. We'll talk about in another stream. We're getting close to the end, guys. I'm starting to go hoarse. This is one of the longer streams I've done. Like I said, when it comes to movies, I can just keep talking and talking and talking. When it comes to video games, not so much. But movies, yes. The Warlock collection, the 3-film set, this has Warlock 1, Warlock the Armageddon, and Warlock 3, The End of Innocence. The first 2 movies feature the late Julian Sands. He was found like dead on like a trail in LA or something like that. I guess he got like snowed in or something and ended up dying of exposure or something a few years ago, which is really sad because he was a really good actor. And you could tell he loved playing this character. First movie is kind of like I wouldn't say it's a horror movie. It's kind of like a supernatural thriller action movie where a warlock from like the 16th century comes forward in time to reassemble the Devil's Bible to have him take over the world. And then this warlock hunter follows him forward in time, and it's actually really, really fun. It's a really well-made movie. It was directed by what's his name? He directed Halloween H2O, Friday the 13th, 2 and 3, Forever Young. Oh, God damn it! What's his freaking name? Steve Miner. Directed Lake Placid. It's really well made. The thing that really sucked about it was just when it was about to get released theatrically, Vestron Pictures, the company that produced the movie, went bankrupt, and they could only afford to put it in like 10 theaters countrywide or nationwide. And me and my friends were gonna go and see it in the theater. We went to the only theater that was showing it in the area, and when we got there, we were like, yeah, 3 tickets to see Warlock, please. And they're like, yeah, we're not showing that today. We're like, but you have it on the listings as showing like 5 showings of it today. They're like, yeah, no one's been coming to see the movie. You're probably the first people that have come to see this movie since it opened. So we've just stopped showing it because it's not going to make us any money. And we were like, what? So we ended up going to see the Neverending Story 2 instead, and that was a mistake. But Warlock 1 is super fun and fast-paced. Laurie Singer's in it as well. She plays like this modern-day character that's showing the Warlock Hunter guy around because it's like a fish out of water thing going on with him. She's kind of like the weakest link. She kind of looks like she's not into it compared to him and Julian Sands. But the second one, Warlock the Armageddon, was made by James Hickox, who did Hellraiser 3. And if you've seen Hellraiser 3, you know about like his kinetic way of filmmaking. And let's just throw lots of CGI at it and real quick cuts and gore and violence and all that. And it's the same thing. Warlock 2 is just like, it's fun. I like it. I like the cast. It has Paula Marshall in it. Talked to her on the phone when I was working at JCPenney Catalog after this came out, and that was kind of funny. She was also in Hellraiser 3. It's like about a bunch of druids who are, every like 100 years, the warlock will come back and try to release the devil from his prison, and these like 2 druid warriors are fated to like come together and stop him from doing that. And these like 2 teenagers find out that they're the Druid Warriors. And it's half road trip movie because the whole thing with the Warlock is a road trip movie, but with the 2 Druid Warriors, it's like a Rambo training montage thing, it's fun. I like it. But it's not nearly as good as the first. And then the third one has Bruce Payne, the king of overacting, playing a Warlock, not the Warlock, a Warlock in it. And it has Ashley Lawrence from the first 2 Hellraiser movies in it. as one of the leads, and it's like a haunted house movie with this warlock running around the house, and I've never watched it because it doesn't have Julian Sands in it. Julian Sands makes those movies. And speaking of James D.R. Hickox or whatever, we have his 2 Waxwork movies on a double feature. These he made before he made Hellraiser 3 and Warlock the Armageddon. Waxwork 1 is a really fun, campy horror movie about this cursed waxwork where all of the wax displays, if you cross the threshold into the display, you become a part of it. And they're all displaying like famous scenes from horror movies. So one girl sees this scene from Dracula and she gets like entranced by the wax statue of Dracula or the vampire in it, and she wants to go and touch it. And when she walks past the barrier, she goes into that world that display inhabits, and she becomes a part of the story. And when she dies in that story, she becomes a part of the display as well. There's another one that has to do with a werewolf. There's another one that has to do with a mummy. There's another one that has to do with like a gill man. And it's really, really fun because at the end, all of the displays come to life and go on a murder rampage, and it's really, really fun. The second one is kind of like a crackhead fever dream that kind of picks up where the second one left off, but instead of like it having to do with these wax displays, these wax exhibition things, it's just like the characters go time hopping, and one of them is in a black and white movie all of a sudden. One of them is in Alien. And it just kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just kind of like, hey, we got some money. Let's throw a movie together real quick kind of feeling to it. And then there's this whole thing that has to do with like the Marquis de Sade. And the lead character all of a sudden out of nowhere goes like, I like for people to whip me in the butt with, a leather whip. It's just like, what's happening? But it's all right. Bruce Campbell's in it for one of the segments, like the black and white segment. Marina Sirtis, who played Troy on Next Generation, is in it too. It's okay. It got Hickox the job to make Hellraiser 3, but I prefer the first one completely. And then the last set I'm going to talk about tonight is another one from Vestron. These last 2 were all Vestron sets. This last one is the Wishmaster collection. Has all 4 of the Wishmaster movies. The only one worth a damn is the first one. It's the only way you can get the first one, so I bought it. But I got this like for $10 at Best Buy. So I wasn't going to pass it up, even though it has 3 really shitty direct-to-video movies on it. The first Wishmaster is very much like what I was talking about with Hellraiser 3, where it's just very fast-paced, gory, quick edits, lots of weird CGI thrown around. There's an evil genie stuck inside a ruby, this giant ruby, and every time somebody makes a wish, the genie finds some way to kind of twist it to, make it kind of gross and evil. One guy who runs a pharmacy is sick of this homeless dude that's hanging out outside his store, and he keeps on trying to kick him out and get the police to drag him away, but it never works. So he makes a wish with the genie, and he's like, I wish that guy would die of cancer. And instead, he makes the guy that runs the pharmacy die of cancer, like very fast, like within 30 seconds. Stuff like that. So it's like the whole monkey's paw kind of situation. What's his name? Andrew Divoff plays the genie in the first 2 movies, and he is having like a blast, you can tell, playing the character, which makes the first one so much fun. The lead actress, not so much. She just kind of like, I'm here for a paycheck kind of situation. But it's got a lot of really cool special effects and makeup effects, like physical makeup effects, practical effects, I should say. And it's really cool. I saw it in the theater, and I had a blast watching it. And I was really excited about the sequel, which is called Evil Never Dies. And then I watched it. It went direct to video. And that is a huge piece of shit. Basically, it's the genie loose in a prison. And it's just what you expect. It's the stuff from the first movie with a lot of prison rape jokes going on in it. And it's not good. Guy who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 2 directed it. I was like, wow, the mighty have fallen. He made Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and The Hidden, 2 really good movies. And then this. So, And then we have Wishmaster 3. What's the title of that one? I can't even read it. I can't even read the subtitle of the third one. The fourth one is called The Prophecy Fulfilled. Totally different actor takes over for Andrew Divoff, and I didn't even bother watching the third and fourth one because I did not like the second one at all. So just bought this for the first one. I don't know if you can read. Yeah, it's a little blurry. I can't even read what the third subtitle is. But, yep, that's it. So that's it for tonight. Really long stream, too. I'm going to be hoarse tomorrow. I will be back next Thursday, starting off my Blu-ray collection proper, like the individual releases. next Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Central. That will be what's going on there. I'll probably cover everything. So when it comes to my individual Blu-ray releases, I'm going to go alphabetically. So I'm going to do everything in the A's, then everything in the B's, and go down the line. So I have a lot of movies that start with A. So each stream might be maybe 45 minutes to an hour long, depending on how many movies I have that start with each letter. So we'll do the A's starting next week. So I hope to see you then. I'm also going to upload on Friday episode 11 of my Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I streamed on Twitch a few weeks back on this channel. So yeah, look for that on Friday. I would say Friday evening, or maybe around like 7 p.m. or something. We'll see what time I'm able to get around to doing that, because I got to make a really crazy, complicated thumbnail for that. So keep an eye out for that. I will see you all hopefully next week. And then definitely remind everybody to remember that I'm going to be doing my April recent pickups live stream at the last day of the month, and it's going to include everything that I bought at the Midwest Gaming Classic this past weekend, and I bought a lot. So stay tuned for that as well. So thanks everybody for coming and hanging out with me tonight. I will see you all next time. Stay safe out there. Chris of Midnight. What? I need to take a nap. Chris of Midlife Crisis Media out.